I want to talk about your early career and how you got to this point first, because I think you kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of people. So first of all, let's start with just how you got to Silicon Valley.
I drove. Okay, so I grew up in a small town near Buffalo, New York. And as a kid, I had a proclivity for math. And so starting in 6th grade, I went to the University of Buffalo for math. So I was like normal student during the day and math nerd at night. And I loved math, and math got to this kind of, it got to where it wasn't just arithmetic, obviously, it got theoretical, and it was kind of mind-blowing, and it was fun and applied. But it was also getting in the way of me being a normal kid, for my last couple of years of high school. I mean, I'd still played sports and stuff like that, but while my friends were drinking beer in a farmer's field on a Wednesday night, I was doing math. And so I finally just kind of almost had like a math breakdown. I was like, enough, fuck it, like I'm out. And I went back to being kind of normal. And when I applied to school, I found the one school in the country that doesn't have any math or science requirement, and it was the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown. And so that was it for me.
So you didn't take a break from math. You went on a math strike.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I was out. I was just checking out. And so I went to School of Foreign Service at Georgetown, was studying to be a spy or a diplomat.
You're not very covert.
No, yeah. Also, the number one reason I didn't become a spy or a diplomat is that you can't pay back your student loans on what spies and diplomats make.
Do they make that little?
So you'd have to sell some secrets to some Russians or something. Like you'd
be forced to be
other
unethical.
choice, yeah, or default on your loans, one or the other. But I went to school there. I studied abroad a lot, South America, all over Europe, and it was while I was living in Spain that Netscape went public, and I just remember this feeling of FOMO, and I don't think that was a word back then, but I just felt like, holy shit, there's this whole thing going on out there, and I could be there, and I'm not there, and yet at the same time I was also intimidated because I didn't have computer science skills. The last and only language I ever programmed actually was BASIC on an Apple II Plus that I got in 1983.
That is the last program language I programmed in too.
And so I felt weirdly like I was missing out, but also that I could do something there.
So when you say what caught your attention was them going public, a lot of people will say what caught my attention was seeing Mosaic for the first time, seeing the web. Was it the money that caught your? Well,
no, I mean, think about this. I went to college from 1993 to 1997 on the East Coast. The only reason I got an email address is because I didn't have enough money to call my parents from Europe, right? I grew up in a traditional middle-class family, and so I got an email address and they got a CompuServe account, just literally so I could wait in line at a university. I went to a university in Spain that has 160,000 students, and there was one computer lab, and so you'd wait for 2 hours to use the computer to email by Pine.
So you're like a military soldier calling home.
Pretty much. But that was the only reason I got email. I mean, remember, we didn't have cell phones in college. I'm 37, I'm not 50, but we didn't have any cell phones. If you didn't know where the party was when you left.
I'm 37 as well. You should be directing this to the 18-year-old.
No,
he's the one who doesn't get it.
Remember back then, if you left the dorm not knowing where the party was that night, you weren't going to find it. That was it. No one was texting you up hey bros, or you weren't checking Foursquare Path to see everyone was kicking it. That was it. You're shit out of luck. So back to the library.
I remember going to the 6 bars and being is anyone at this one?
Yeah, maybe, yeah, you could pattern. But so I didn't grow up surrounded by an intense amount of technology. And frankly, in Buffalo, nobody there was writing software, there wasn't an entrepreneurial culture at all. And I think one of the things you'll note is that most entrepreneurs are surrounded by entrepreneurs at some point. They collect, and that's where the spark hits, There are guys like Evan Williams who grew up in the middle of Nebraska and know they want to do something, but that something usually happens when they go somewhere else and start hanging around other people who've either done it before or kind of can help them, spark that a little bit. And so I came back from Europe, and I wanted to go into technology, but I didn't know how. There wasn't a clear path, and all Georgetown had was interviewing to go be an investment banker. And all I'd figured out about investment bankers is that they were douchebags. I hadn't quite, I didn't know any growing up or anything, and I just kind of, the ones I'd met were assholes, and so I was just like, this is probably not what I want to do. So I did what any...
You do now have money from Goldman Sachs.
Oh, I have no money from Goldman Sachs.
I thought you had money from Goldman Sachs.
No, you should fact check.
All right, well, that's why you're here. Did you...
Maybe from other investment banks, but not Goldman Sachs.
All right, but bankers, who you just all called douchebags. We'll get back to that.
There's a lot of self-awareness among bankers, to be clear. Like,
They know they're douchebags?
I'm not sure most bankers would be offended by that. Like, right? I mean, do you know bankers?
Yeah, they tend to have that thing of like, oh yeah, the other guys are douchebags.
Yeah.
And they kind of all think that.
Yeah, exactly. Like most lawyers, you know, too. Like, everyone knows one nice lawyer, and the rest are... No, So I couldn't... There wasn't anywhere to, like, interview for a job. And so what I did... And I didn't have any money, and I didn't know any venture capitalists. And so I applied to law school, which is like the default for someone who did well in school and has no idea what they want to do. It's just to sell your soul to the legal profession. But what I did was I took the student loans, and I don't know why they do this, but they send you a check that you're supposed to walk down to the school instead of just wiring it directly. But I cashed the checks, and I used them to start a company, and I told the school that the checks had never shown up. And so, and I got away with that for a little while. And I started a company. I was a horrible founder. I had a lot of hubris. I thought I didn't need help. When I did need help, I didn't know where to look for it. I was in Washington, D.C., and it wasn't a cool place to start a company back then. It was absurd. And I was lucky I didn't blow all the money.
What was the company doing?
I was trying to do two things. One is I was trying to data mine. So this is 1997, 98, right? So I was trying to... I'd done some data mining work when I was, doing math shit. So I was trying to data mine predictively who would buy shit online. Mm-hmm. So given a data set, who would be the best of those leads that would possibly buy something on Amazon. Mm-hmm. And it just never went anywhere. And then the other thing I was trying to do was, it was called cash action. And what it was, like those class action lawsuits you get coupons about, et cetera. I wanted to aggregate all of that in one place so you could come and find out from me, like, all the shit you were entitled to. Like some money off of Maytag washer and $5 from Sprint and that kind of stuff. Because the back end of that model is the more, if you're a lawyer and you bring plaintiffs to those cases, you get paid. Mm-hmm. Like the most expensive search term on Google is mesothelioma. Mm-hmm. And mesothelioma is a kind of cancer you only get if you've been exposed to asbestos. And if you have that kind of cancer, you're eligible for the Asbestos Settlement Trust Fund, which is billions of dollars. And if a lawyer brings you to that settlement fund, they get like $35,000. Mm-hmm. And so there's like this weird back-scratching kind of win on both sides. And so I was trying to aggregate all that shit. I was awful. It didn't work out very well. So I had some money left, but it was less than I owed the school. Mm-hmm. And so I, again, did kind of the prudent thing, and I went and opened a bunch of day trading accounts and started placing really,
Hope this wasn't like January 2000.
That's the next chapter. No, this is 98. And mm-hmm. So like I started throwing money at stocks and like hanging out on Yahoo message boards to find really savvy investments. And I made metric shit tons of money. I was invested in the highest performing stock in the NASDAQ from 99 to 2000, a company called FirstCom that was a Latin American CLAC. I mean, mm-hmm. I bought into it in pennies, and we ultimately sold it to AT&T at $36 a share to become AT&T Latin America. Now, here's what happens when things go really well.
How much money did you make, first of all?
I turned what was left of my student loans into $12 million. So there's a way that happened.
That is not spy money.
No, I took some liberties along the way, though. There's a rule in trading called Reg T, and Reg T says, hey, if you've got $1,000 in your stock account, you can buy $2,000 worth of stock on margin, but you have to maintain a 50% margin requirement there. Mm-hmm. Hedge funds and stuff aren't subject to this, just like individual investors are. The problem was in the early days of online trading, the trading platforms hadn't built that in yet. And so if you had $1,000 in your account, you could buy $1 million worth of stock. And your phone would ring, and it would be a customer service representative at E-Trade or DLJ Direct or something saying, hey, our records indicate that you owe us $999,000, and they would give you 7 days to pay. So during those 7 days, you owned $1 million worth of stock. And if it went up, like let's say it went up 20%, at the end of the week, when you didn't have the $999,000 to pay, you'd sell your stock, pay them their $999, and then keep the $201,000, and then go bigger tomorrow. And so this method works really well in a bull market, and that's how I got to that kind of scale.
Were you doing this all the time? Like, were you the day trader sitting in his underwear, eating Cheetos and Red Bull, just buying and selling shares, minute by minute?
Mostly accurate, yeah. Yeah, in fact, here's what happens when shit goes right like that. And this is like a temptation across our entire life. When everything's going up to the right, you're convinced it's because you're smart and you made a lot of good decisions, right? And that line only gets firmer and bolder when your buddies around you start echoing that back to you.
Right.
And so friends of mine who were bartenders and limo drivers, I was getting them into the stock too. And they're like, dude, you're a genius. I just bought a boat, and it's all going this way, right? And so the natural human temptation is like, when it's going right, it's because you're a genius. When it goes wrong, it's because you're unlucky.
Right.
And what it takes, it takes usually 3 or 4 times getting your ass kicked before you realize it's actually the inverse. Like, when it's going right, it's because you're lucky, and when it's wrong, you fucked up somewhere and you better go figure it out. And so, sure enough, like a couple years into this, I'm paper rich. Luckily, I didn't spend the money on anything.
Did you ever attend classes?
No, I didn't. So law school, if anyone's been, the unique feature of law school is you only have to go to the exams. In fact, there was a couple exams where I got the highest grade on the exam in the class.
Is that because you were lucky?
No, it's because they're disjointed. Like literally, what goes on in the exam has nothing to do with just the circle jerking in the class. And so, it's just this.
That would be hard to test.
Intellectual, just contortion that has nothing to do with the exam. And so, on a couple exams, I wrote the best exam, and the professor called up and was like, "Hey, I can't seem to find you on my seating chart." I was like, "Oh, I was in the back." You're like, "Near Mike?" "Yeah, near Mike. Yeah, hey, it was a pleasure having a class with you." Anyway, so you can actually correspond to law school and not have to be there. In fact, the key is if you're not going to be there, you can't go to the first day and have them know who you are at all. You have to never go. So you can't even slash. You have to just.
So if anyone's watching this and they're taking from this, I can become a millionaire if I'm in law school and only take the test. If they've already gone to a class, they've screwed up.
Yeah, let's be clear. What will come up later is I'm a horrible lawyer. So I probably should have been going to those classes. But anyway, so, all right. When we last left our protagonist, he was making a shit ton of money.
Yes. Well, he's the protagonist for now. We'll see.
Yeah.
You might do evil things pretty soon.
He's surrounded by all his childhood buddies telling him he's a genius.
Right.
Everything's up and to the right. He may or may not be wearing pants. And
probably not. Cheeto dust everywhere.
Right. And so, I was also I moved to Park City, Utah during this time, though I was ostensibly really. Did that just happen?
Yes. He wasn't there yesterday, or he might have won a prize.
Yeah. I might have something else for him, though. So I moved to Park City, Utah. Some buddies of mine started a record store that I got involved in, a retail record store. And again, my law school is ostensibly, it was factually in Georgetown, and Washington, D.C. And so but I was living in Utah. It seemed appropriate. And so I was ski bumming, helping run this record store and trading. And as a quick aside, record stores at that time, so this is 98. Napster started, but you remember the early days of Napster. Napster was just enough to get you to, you could sample any album, but to download the whole album was a big pain in the ass.
Right.
So it was amazing for us because you get exposed to all this new music and then come to us to buy it, right? So everyone was always like, that was a shitty time to be in music, and it was quite the opposite. Napster was the greatest thing that ever happened to our record store. But if you live in a ski town, there are essentially three main currencies in getting shit done. Like if you need to make a transaction.
I bet I can guess.
One is US dollars. Two is film canisters full of weed. And three is CDs. And so we ended up kind of being like a bank. Like the financial clearinghouse for town, because like I'd go into a restaurant and a guy would be like, do you want to pay the bill? I'd be like, no, you know what, come to the store, I'll hook you up tomorrow. And so a guy would come down to the store and he's like, what was that meal worth? I'm like, oh, it's probably worth 4 CDs. And so, but like if you owed Paul 4 CDs, you know, you could transfer that debt, and like Paul could, you know, move it around. It was like there was transitivity, and and so we would keep books on who owed who money and CDs and weed, really. And so so it wasn't that far removed from what I do today. No, I'm just kidding. But it was amazing. And
was there actually like a currency though? Like were so many CDs worth so many dollars, worth so many? Because I mean, it couldn't have just been the value of CDs to dollars. Because then, what's the advantage in paying in CDs? And how did weed figure in?
Well, again, like have you ever lived in a barter economy? Have you ever been in a barter economy?
No.
Barter economies don't pay a lot of tax. You know, markups are very fungible, et cetera. Like ski towns operate on barter economies. I live in a ski town now. People trade, you know. But yeah, there was definitely. I mean, the culture of our record store was such that like we would sell you Britney Spears, but you had to sign a public declaration that was posted at the cash register, like a sex offender registry, basically, where you had to put your name and address, and you had to declare to the community that you actually bought that shitty album. And so sure, there was like a full, you know, there was a full range of prices around CDs and stuff like that. There was a market, let's say, like true market economics there. But the point is, I'm living in a ski town. I'm surrounded by a bunch of Trustafarians buying String Cheese Incident albums and guitar strings and shit from us. And I realized my entire portfolio consists of one stock. And I'm highly, highly levered. I'm like tonsils deep in the stock. And one of my buddies is like, dude, you got to diversify. I'm like, you're right. You're so right. So I went and I bought another stock.
What was the stock?
That stock was FirstCom.
Okay.
And so I bought another stock called Myriad Genetics. And it was a Park City-based company that was doing kind of what companies like 23andMe do now, except just for individual specific genes. BRCA1 and 2, the breast cancer genes, colon cancer, and prostate cancer genes. And you could take a test and see whether you had an indicator or the likelihood that you had these cancers. Totally something I can get behind, totally something I believe in. Insurance companies are paying for it, amazing model, really psyched. So I've got these 2 stocks, and I'm like all in and then some on these 2 stocks. And within a short period of time, in the spring of 2000, 2 things happened. One is AT&T takes AT&T Latin America and just BKs it, bankrupts it, like just writes it down to 0 to just refresh the balance sheet. And in like a matter of days, that stock went from $40-something a share to pretty much 0. And when that happens, like those guys who you borrowed all that money from are like, hey, fuck you, we're going to sell it all. And so in a matter of like hours, I went from basically $12 million to about $2 million of net worth. And so I was a little freaked out, obviously. And yet that money was kind of virtual. I never like spent it or anything, so it never really meant anything. And I didn't grow up with any money, so nobody had ever told me how much money that really was. Like how, I mean, that's fuck you money. I was done. Like, yeah. But nobody had ever really taught me that. And so I had $2 million left, and I'm hanging out with all these guys. I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And they're like, you know what you do, bro? You take a couple days, you just go skiing, man. You just relax, you get your head straight, you know. And I'm like, you're so right.
These do sound like good wealth advisors.
Yeah, I'm like, bro, you're so right. And so I walk away from my terminal and I go skiing and I hang out. I actually went to Austria for a little bit, and while I was there, on the back end of a joint address by Bill Clinton and Tony Blair, 2 guys who I like and respect a lot, foreign policy address for some fucking reason that I still haven't fully processed, and I talk to my therapist about intermittently. At the end of that talk, they say, oh, by the way, one of the things we decided to talk about and we agree on is that Any private company holding intellectual property rights over human genomic material, that's just anathema, and we're going to do anything we can in our legislative powers to undermine those patents. And so if you're a big investor in a company whose entire lifeblood is patents over these breast cancer and colon cancer and prostate cancer gene tests, you're going to see the stock go from like $250 a share to $40 a share in a matter of minutes in the middle of the trading day. And so when all the smoke cleared, I owed $4 million in my own name. I was 25 years old. I didn't have anything to show for it. I didn't have a house to sell or anything like that. I was just poor, like really, really poor.
So what was your reaction when you realized that?
Well, I swear, I think owing $20,000 might be harder than owing $4 million.
Because there's an expectation you'll pay that.
There's something so fucking absurd about owing that much money, right? like who here in this room thinks they're going to make $4 million in a lifetime? I was not necessarily among that group of people.
It's a room of entrepreneurs, so I'd hope many of them are.
Yeah, but I mean, that's $4 million is crazy. That's mad cash, right? And I didn't.
And yet you blew 3 times that.
Well. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
Did you ever think I should do some profit taking? Did that ever occur to you?
No, I know. If you're winning, why would you take profits? Like, if everyone around you is telling you you're a genius, you're a stock picker, and you happened. By the way,
CNBC was saying that at the same time. I mean, this was a widespread phenomenon.
No, I should have known that when in every sports bar in town they turned off ESPN and turned on CNBC, we were probably in a bubble. But no, what happens when things are going really right, it's very easy to look back and do a little regression analysis and correlate to okay, you know what? I'm in a Latin American CLEC. Oh, by coincidence, I speak Spanish. Those must be related. It's a competitive local exchange carrier that has fiber optics. One of my first summer jobs that I used to dig trenches to install fiber optic cable into. That must be related. And you kind of put these data points together and you think, oh, this is my fucking destiny. I'm brilliant, and this is how I chose this stock. And everyone around you is telling you, yeah, dude, you're the fucking man. Like, I'm going to Jamaica, Club Med, man, because of you. And you're like, Jesus, I've got the golden touch. And every time you buy more stock, it's worth more next time. And you convince your parents and everybody around you to cash out their IRAs and plow it into the stock. And it's a movement.
Did your families lose money because of your advice?
Yeah. I mean,
seems like that would be worse than owing $4 million yourself.
100% worse. And like I said, owing $4 million compared to tens of thousands that people around me lost. Now, that said, some of my less educated buddies, who you wouldn't consider to be elites, were so much smarter than I was, and they bought their boats and they bought their, they paid off their student loans and kind of walked, and I was the greedy asshole who didn't. So I'm 25, I owe $4 million. I was a legitimate bankruptcy risk, but I someday wanted to be an officer of a public company, and so I just declared that bankruptcy wasn't an option.
You declared you would not declare bankruptcy.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's double declaration squared. So I went back to the guys I owed the money to and was like, hey, look, I'm up the creek right now. I really don't have the resources to pay you, and if I BK, you get nothing. So why don't we work something out? And so I worked it down to 2 1/8, and from 2 1/8, I basically went on a payment plan. So imagine a mortgage for the most expensive house you'll never own. And this is back when interest rates were 7%, so it was nasty. But I graduated, I got my degree as a lawyer, I took the bar, and I came out to Silicon Valley to sell my soul because I needed to pay back $2.8 million in a hurry. And because that was your question, right, is how I ended up in Silicon Valley? Yeah.
It's quite an answer. I've asked that question a lot over the last 15 years of covering entrepreneurs. That is the first time I've gotten that as an answer.
Yeah, so to sum up, I took liberties with a few financial securities laws and totally.
Did you pay all the money back?
Yeah, ultimately I paid it all back.
How long did it take?
So 2000, spring of 2000, I went belly up, and it was in 2005 that I finally paid off my very last dollar of student loans. They were the last thing I paid back because you can defer those if you need to. And I accidentally overpaid Sallie Mae by, I don't remember the exact number. It's like $28 and something. And they sent me a refund check and I never cashed it because I really like the fact that Sallie Mae owes me money. And so it's on the fridge in our house.
Is it still on the fridge?
It is. I just really fucking like the comfort of knowing that I got back out. It took a long time though. I went to get a job as a lawyer, and so I was working as a lawyer during the day, and at night I was moonlighting, doing legal work off of Craigslist, writing terms and conditions for porn sites and stuff, and
Did they pay you in porn?
No, they paid me in cold hard cash. That's a cash business.
Not weed or CDs.
And the funny thing about adult sites is they all just thought that having strong terms and conditions would get them out of trouble for everything else they did. But yeah, I'm like one of the only guys who's ever kept all his clothes on and yet made money in the adult industry. But no, they were among my clients. But do you remember Elance? Mm-hmm. I was, I think, the first lawyer on Elance. And so I would do any of the contracts that people put there. And it just turned out that the adult website community went there.
Early adopters.
Yeah, they were. They were early adopters of everything. They're always the ones driving the cutting edge of technology. Mm-hmm. I was doing any of the work I could. I did voiceover work. You don't see it? It's not happening right now?
Give us a sample. Do like a car ad.
This is really fucked up to admit. There was an African American gentleman who had written an autobiography, and he needed a voiceover for it. And
go on.
My brother, who's an actor and like a YouTube star, he and I figured out how to modulate our voices to sound low and appropriate, and I don't think they ever published this audiobook, but we got paid. So
you're not going to say who it was?
No fucking way.
It was not like Nelson Mandela, was
No,
it?
it was a baseball player. It was an early baseball player who I hold in high regard. I needed the money. And so basically I did what I could for money. So last time somebody asked me this, I was like, I did anything I could for money. And that became the fodder of the chat room. But I just did what I could to try and pay off this debt and keep it together.
Was this a secret? Did people know? Were you very open about this, or was it something you were kind of ashamed
Why would
of?
you ever tell anyone? You feel like a total loser, right? It's a failure. And so I think one of the things that you start to learn about Silicon Valley is it is a place where you can wear failure on your arm, but most people who say that after they've succeeded once, mm-hmm. right?
It's very true.
It's the luxury of winning. You can then go back and sit in front of a crowd in LA and talk about what a douche you were back then. Right. I broke these rules and took liberties here and lied to these people and lost my ass, but I've made it since, and so let me tell you my story.
Right. It's the arc of every Panda Monthly.
Yeah, it's harrowing, man. To lose everything and more and lose money for your friends and family and stuff like that, that's not something you're going to brag about.
So what kept you going during that time?
I didn't have a choice. I think that's kind of it. All right, I'm working as a lawyer at Fenwick and West. It was a great job. I was really bad at it, but I got paid really well to do it. I'm not a detail person, and that's all lawyers' entire job is to look at every square inch of the document and identify all the ways you could get totally nut punched, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just that could go wrong, term. That could go wrong, that could go wrong. And what I do for a living is be yeah, but wouldn't it be awesome if?
Right.
Right? That's what every investor entrepreneur is yeah, we could totally, but wouldn't it be cool if? And so I was a horrible lawyer. They tolerated me. And eventually, about 13 months into that job, I got laid off. Mm-hmm. Which was a great business decision on their part, but didn't feel good at the time. And it was. I used to say it was 4 days before September 11th, and I recently found the termination. Actually, this weekend I found the termination letter in my garage. It was fucking awesome rereading that, but it wasn't. I like put those events. It was a week and 4 days before September 11th, and I realized it was because they still paid me for that week. And then eventually on Thursday, I went into the firm and I said, look, here's the thing. I never got to use the firm condo in Hawaii, and which is like one of the fringe benefits. I'm like, I busted my ass here for 13 months, never got to use the firm condo. I've never been to Hawaii. It sounds awesome. I've got something I can offer you. And they're like, go on. And I was like, reporters are going to be calling here asking all about the massive layoffs. Like, I will be the laid off person who talks to the newspaper and says that you guys totally took care of us. You're awesome people. You like, it hurt you more than it hurt us. Like, but I want the firm condo. So a couple days later, I was in Hawaii. And
I love that you're telling me a story about how you profited off manipulating the press.
Sarah.
I'm now rethinking every word that's come out of your mouth.
No, they did do right by us, actually. In truth, like, Fenwick did take care of us.
They did send you to Hawaii.
They did send me to Hawaii. Like, I actually had a lot of loyalty to them. They were really genuinely benevolent. They didn't have to lay us off, but they were. Anyway, so for that week, I had job prospects. Like, people were interviewing me and like saying good things about me, et cetera. And then September 11th happened, and like my entire world, the entire economy, all of Silicon Valley just imploded. And everyone who was thinking about hiring me was like, hey, good luck, kid, you'll do well. And I obviously didn't have any cash in the bank. And I didn't have a network. You know, I came from Buffalo, and like, I didn't go to Stanford or Cal. I didn't have any homies in the area. I just didn't have anything to fall back on. And moving back to Buffalo is just a sad story. And so I didn't consider that an option. So I did a couple of things. Well, one is I relentlessly applied for jobs. 784 resumes went out with no answer. Number two is I kept doing the freelancing stuff, like, the Elance and shit like that, and Craigslist and stuff. But number three is I started going out and trying to like generate my own business live. And so I would go to like networking events, the Churchill Club, the Chinese Software Professionals Association, the Indus Entrepreneurs, all the guys from India and Pakistan and Bangladesh would meet. Like, they're an awesome group of people, actually, and they have no problem with a honky from Buffalo rolling in. They're like the most meritocratic group of people I've ever rolled with. But I would go to these meetings. Normally they cost $25. I didn't have $25, but I speak Spanish, so I would go in through the kitchen. And I'd go into these meetings.
Is that really true?
That's entirely true. Like, I had no petty cash to even pay my way into these things, you know? Like, $45 entry fee or something like that sounds immaterial to people who have a salary, but I'm sure there are people in this room who don't have a salary right now, and $20 is real, right? And I saw people coming in this door. No, I'm just kidding. But
speaking Spanish.
Should have been, yeah. I probably would have offered a job to everyone coming in that door. But I would go to these things and I'd hand people a business. I was wearing a sport coat, tweed. I was bringing it, you know? And I'd hand people a business card that said, like, Chris Sacca, attorney at law. And people would look at me and they'd be like, oh, you're a smart kid. Things will work out for you. And I'm like, you have no fucking idea. Like, if I don't make like $2,000 this week, I'm going to have to move out of my shitty apartment in Foster City back to Buffalo. Like, not an option. And so I was struggling at this for a while. And then it occurred to me, like, you know what? I have to do some marketing here. And so I decided that my main problem was that I was me. And I was just alone, and I was this little, young, inexperienced individual. So I created a business. I sat, and it was funny, this weekend when I was going through these papers, I found the list of names I played with, like my brainstorming of like what I should call it. Most of them are horrible. They sound like characters from a Buckaroo Banzai comic book or something. But ultimately, I settled on the Salinger Group. It sounds mnemonic. Like, everyone said the word Salinger at some point in their life. And group sounds like, you know, there's some shit going on there. There's
more
like
than one.
More than one person. Like, that's a thing. And I actually, my wife now was one of my very close friends back then, you know, years ago. She designed a super hip logo for me. And I found a guy in Elance who built a website that said a whole lot of nothing. You can find this at the Wayback Machine Internet Archive. You can look for SalingerGroup.com, and you'll see my website, and it is drivel. It has no physical address because all I had was a shitty apartment in Foster City. It has no phone number because all I had was a cell phone. And it had like just the most amorphous terms so that anything you were possibly working on, I was of value to you. I had like a whole venture division, a media division, and a consulting division just in case it didn't fall into those first two buckets. And I just went out with this awesome business card, and I just started saying we instead of I. And I didn't lie about what I was capable of doing, because that's just setting yourself up for disaster, and Silicon Valley is definitely a reputation place. But I just said we instead of I. And I shit you not, people would see that card and be like, oh yeah, the Salinger Group, I've heard of you guys. You guys do good work, yeah. And then they would hire me to do shit for them. And so before you know it, I'm like a very active lawyer and business consultant and media guy and like helping people name their companies and shit, and like doing this for equity and for cash, and like it was a business all of a sudden. Like it had no excuse being a business. And it ultimately, kind of a couple of my clients grew into bigger clients, and ultimately I became an executive at Spadera, which is the company I worked at before Google. So it literally bridged me into that. But to be clear, was anyone here unemployed between like 2000 and 2003 or 4?
My husband was.
Yeah.
So my husband designed, similar to you with your porn business, he was a graphic designer. We moved to Silicon Valley.
Let's just be really clear, because lest that be excerpted out of context.
Doing legal work for the porn industry. We moved to Silicon Valley in like 99. He got there about the time the market crashed. Graphic designer, worst industry to be in the Valley at that time. So he beat out hundreds of people for a job designing hooker ads in the back of SF magazine for $12 an hour.
It's legit. That's serious money back then.
It was.
No, I mean it was a disaster. I mean, for those
it was a brutal time.
For
to
those
be
who weren't
unemployed.
around, just to be clear, like, you couldn't get a U-Haul out of San Francisco,
right?
Because they had all gone one way out of town and nobody was bringing them back.
Yeah.
True story. Like, it was just so screwed. There was nowhere to go, and I would send all these resumes out and never hear back. Like. You would literally, a mentor of mine taught me, if someone makes eye contact with you, that's because they want to talk to you, go in for the kill, you know? And that was incredibly fruitless for like 2 years. I mean, just nobody. And you started really and it was amazing the disconnect. Like, I think one of the reasons why I feel kinship with folks who've lost their jobs and their houses right now is because, A, it wasn't that long ago for me, but B, I just remember how friends of mine who had jobs then were like sympathetic to me very briefly, and then they went bowling or whatever, you know? And
right.
And yet I saw the world through this lens of like, holy shit, I have no dollars.
Yeah.
In fact, I have significantly fewer than no dollars.
Right.
And like I would do anything for $150 from this company, or $200 from these guys, or $300 from those guys. And when I heard about people making like 65 grand a year, it just sounded like a gold mine to me. And I'm sure that's what's going on, you know, now for a lot of people in this country right now. But
so I was at a dinner with Jim Collins the other night, and he was saying that, you know, one thing that creates, one thing that I guess defines people who are sort of the most powerful people in the world, whether it's in business or in politics or whatever, is that, you know, everyone goes through these periods where they just get like completely decked. And it's like a smaller percentage will like get up, then we're hit down. And then like you'll get decked again, and then an even smaller percentage will get up. And finally, you winnow it down to the point where it's just there's certain personality traits that mean those people keep getting up. Maybe it's arrogance, maybe it's resilience. You can sort of say whatever it is. I'm curious, in all of these times, like, what made you keep getting up? Was it ego? Was it pride? I mean, because, you know, you don't have the story of someone who moved to the Valley and was like, I want to change the world.
So I guess there's two things I want to say to that. One is that, like, there's a certain narcissism in thinking that that cycle only happens to people who have been really, you know, who have had a lot of success and been great. Like,
No, I think
they're the only, I think, frankly, they're the only people whose stories we bother to ask about. You know, like I think most people. My favorite class in college was ethnography.
But to make a point, you just said there were more every U-Haul was outgoing, so a lot of people didn't stay and try again.
No, but I don't. I wonder how many of those people gave up, and I wonder how many of those people just like I was probably a week away from like having to leave my shit and go home at some point. Like I think there are a lot of people who are on. I just think like the stories of bouncing back aren't uniquely like it's not just the titans of business. Like frankly, I think they're the people who get more credit for it than regular people do.
Yeah.
The people who do it and don't ask for anything
Well,
and
there's
don't
certainly
get
people who
stories written
bounce
about.
back from like cancer or something. There are people who bounce back from things in personal ways, not professional.
Dude, there's an
for
entire
sure.
fucking generation of people who went and fought in wars, and they're younger than us now,
At any rate, whether you buy the premise or not, what was it that made you so like? Why was going home so bad? Why did you have to repay this debt? Like, what was it that kept driving you?
I'm just a little bit irrational about some things, I think. Like, when I was a kid, I was 6, I think. My mom and dad took me to hike Long's Peak, the tallest mountain in Colorado that you can hike without ropes. And we, departed campsite at like 3 in the morning to go summit this thing, and a storm hit, and we couldn't get to the top. And we were like 2 miles short. And I was devastated. I wanted to stay and do it, and it was just unsafe. There was like lightning, we had to get down below the tree line. And when we got back to the campsite, I refused to stop walking. I kept walking until I'd logged the 2 miles that I missed up at the top, because otherwise, even at that age, I would have felt like I gave up or I lost or something like that. I certainly didn't have the kind of parents who kicked my ass to think like that at all. It was just something that genetically I kind of had, I think. I don't know. And so, I spent some time talking to Evan Williams recently, who I realized, like, when he founds companies, he doesn't weigh, like, success versus failure. Just failure isn't part of the equation. Like, even when something fails, up until the point it fails, failure wasn't a consideration. It wasn't a possibility. I think for me, like, I just didn't admit that going home was really one of my choices. I didn't admit that leaving and getting my ass kicked by this game was really something that was possible. Look, declaring bankruptcy would have been a financially savvy move. Like,
right.
Like wipe that out, 7 years, like just bust your ass a little bit, and then you can get credit cards again, and it's all good. There was just something, and it wasn't. I don't think it was ego. Ego plays into a lot of what I do and did, but I don't think it was that. I just think it was just being irrational, I think. But yeah.
So when you were working at Google, that's when people really started hearing about you. I mean, that was when I met you. I'm sure that's when a lot of your reporters, you got on their radar. And you always had a reputation at Google for being one of those guys who kind of tended to exaggerate what he was doing. And I've seen in interviews and in conversations, you've sort of advised people to kind of fake it until you make it, and that seems to be a lot of sort of what you've described with the Salinger Group. How would you feel if an entrepreneur came in and did that? And do you expect that entrepreneurs kind of do that?
Well, I think I'm curious what I didn't do at Google that I said I've done. Anything?
I mean, maybe it's the I's versus the we's. This is just something, and maybe it's all people who are haters, but you know this. People say this about you.
There was one hater. There was one guy who used to write this. It was this guy, Owen, at Valleywag, who wrote a series of articles saying I never did anything there. But every time I challenged him to write down what I didn't do, I was fucking busy. I mean, I can list the things I did. And so...
I think it's probably the I-we thing. I don't think it was an issue of people saying that you said you did things you didn't. I think it was an issue of perhaps taking credit for what a team did. I'm not saying you did this. I'm saying you had a reputation for this.
Again, I'm curious. Was it anyone other than that one guy? Really?
Yes.
Did you think that?
I didn't work at Google. I'm not going to venture a guess. I didn't see what you did.
I mean, Google was a free-for-all, right? It was amazing. Like, you didn't really have bosses there. And so you could just build shit without any permission. Like, job titles were made up along the way because you didn't need permission to have a job title. You just filed for business cards, and your business cards came back with whatever title you wanted on it.
What was your title?
I had 6 titles while I was there. I know this because I just went through it. No, I was corporate counsel and business development, global infrastructure group, because I was buying data centers, and like to look like a lawyer, that would be pretty douchey. I was principal, and I was head of special initiatives. So, you know what? I asked somebody recently. There's over 100 principals there now. I was the first. I made that up. And then there's, I think there's over 100 head ofs. And both of those were, I was doing like, I mean, when I did Spectrum, like I had a $4.7 billion budget to go bid on wireless Spectrum. Do you agree with that? Okay.
From what I know, I mean, you did just
curious.
spend up until now talking about generally exaggerating credentials.
Well, we skipped the part of my career where I actually like became an executive of a company and like took a company from like the brink of death to being acquired by Akamai for hundreds of millions of dollars.
I'm here to ask the hard questions.
I know. I'm just saying, like we conveniently skipped the chapter where I created lots of value and So.
We will never get to Uber if we go through that in as much detail.
But no, like, I had this job where at Google, they would just give you the rope to hang yourself. You had so much responsibility. Like, when I originally went there, my job was to buy, build, and license and data center space, you know, like just these server farms without letting Microsoft know that we were doing it. Because they didn't want to know, Google didn't want Microsoft to know how big search was. And so we built shell companies, and we went and bought the stuff and the names of shell companies. Like, is that faking it to me? I'm not sure. I'm waiting for you to jump in.
You're the one who's advised people of that.
And so we would go buy these shells, go buy through these shells, and like we spent hundreds of millions of dollars doing it. And it's funny, like if you call people up and say like, hey, I want to buy your data center for $100 million, and your title is corporate counsel, people don't pick up the phone. But if you tell them that you're principal at, or global infrastructure group or head of special initiatives, they return your call. And so you get shit done. And so that's how I evolved my title over time to get shit done. But the responsibilities in that company were like, you'd grab stuff. If you saw it and you wanted it, you'd grab it. And like, I think like, my haters and critics there were people who were trying to stay within the lines, and I could give a fuck. Like I wanted to get shit done. I loved getting shit done. I was probably almost fired like 3 or 4 very concrete, specific times I can remember. In fact, I remember being walked into the full executive management group once. My boss had his arm around me. He's like, "You need to find a job." I'm like, "You mean like somewhere else in the company?" He's like, "No. Somewhere outside of the company." And we walk in there, and they were gonna like very publicly fire me as a sacrifice to the carriers, so they didn't upset the mobile carriers because I had been offending them. And just as they were getting ready to fire me, Larry Page is like, "You know what? What Sacca's been saying is true. I don't know why we should be apologizing for it. Maybe we should give him some resources to go like build some stuff that would explore it." And like, we come out of that meeting, and my boss like tussles my hair and is like, "This is the big executive promotion we've been looking for you." So it was the Wild West. It was crazy there. But I got to work on a crazy amount of shit. I got to buy companies. I got to start products. I got to, we covered all of Mountain View with Wi-Fi, so we could start free Wi-Fi that's still used by 13,000 people a day, but so that we could start testing location-based ads and stuff like that. I mean, we fucked up the wireless industry and played the biggest hand of poker that's ever been played. Like, I learned a ton along the way, and I got.
What do you think about where Google is today, and what do you think about the company under Larry Page versus the company under Eric Schmidt and the triumvirate?
I mean, Larry's one of the smartest people ever, not just like alive, but ever. And I think he's been sent to us from the future. Like, maybe he won a bet or, used that some weird fortune-telling machine and got teleported or something like that. But he knows what's going to happen ahead. And he was always the guy who was willing to take unreasonably large bets, like just crazy shit. And it was funny. Like, I think the beautiful thing about Eric Schmidt at that company was that it wasn't that he was the adult supervision. I think that underestimates both him and Larry and Sergey. What he was he was the voice of reason that allowed Larry and Sergey to just go off the fucking deep end with their ideas sometimes and just think about the things that would otherwise be unthinkable. Like, we'd be talking about net neutrality, and Larry and Sergey, for the academic exercise of it, could actually be like, well, you know what? What if we just said fuck net neutrality and we just ran fiber to everybody's home and that was it, And now, and it wasn't neutral. And you're like, because you've just spent the whole last year of your life building arguments for why net neutrality makes sense, right? It's the kind of thing a CEO of a company could never actually say in a brainstorm like that.
Right.
But because Larry and Sergey weren't ultimately responsible for the crazy shit they said in those meetings, because Eric was always going to bring us back to some rational point, they were free to think of the shit that was just so off the charts, and so they would just say well, fuck it, let's just, how much would it actually cost to ship one of these devices to every American, And he'd be like, well, $3 billion. And well, we have a lot more than $3 billion, so let's just do it. Instead of advertising and trying to convince people to do it, let's just put one in the mail to everybody, And you're just like, my God, just regular humans don't think like that. So what I'm stoked about and worried about is that with Larry at the helm, there's the opportunity for that company to think more aggressively and just wild, crazy shit. Has anyone here been in a self-driving car yet or seen it? If you go to YouTube and look for self-driving car, I think my personal video is one of the top results, and you'll see I shit in my pants riding that thing for the first time.
I'm not going to that video.
It's amazing. You have to sign it's mature content. No. I got in that thing thinking it was going 5-10 miles an hour around the course. It goes 45 miles an hour around an enclosed parking garage, with walls up, and it's a hybrid, but it's squealing the tires with nobody driving it. They've driven millions of miles with those things already.
I heard the other day the only accident was when a human being was driving it.
I'm sure. These things are way better than people. And so
they're way better than me driving, for sure.
So that's the crazy kind of stuff we can expect from them. At the same time, I worry that without an Eric Schmidt there, I worry that maybe Larry and Sergey feel like now they need to play it safer sometimes too and channel what he used to do, right? So I liked the triumvirate. I thought it worked, and I haven't been there since 2007, so I've only watched from the outside like you, but I deeply respect those three guys, and I think the balance of power worked really well. And I just hope that Larry, because he's now the important guy in charge, doesn't back off his edge.
Right. And what do you think about, you must know Marissa very well, what do you think about Marissa running Yahoo now?
I think Marissa is the most capable person to run a company that might not get turned around. I think she's fascinatingly awesome. I think she's a no bullshit kind of executive. She was one of the few people who could be just really just hard and yet still command so much respect, right? I think and I think there's a double standard for a woman too. I think it's a lot more difficult for a woman to be just really in your face, calling shit as it is, and not be labeled all kinds of names. But she pulled it off. And I think she's just unapologetic for her awesomeness. I just don't know if Yahoo can get its mojo back. I bought some of the stock, actually. I bought some of the stock, so I own a little bit of it. But they lost multiple generations of talent. Who here would sell their company to Yahoo? That's zero hands, I think.
Zero hands. Oh, there's one guy.
Oh, yeah?
He's raised his hand every time we've said raise your hand. No, just I want to point out.
Is he the one who's 17 too? Yeah.
He's also 15.
I think they lost it a little bit. I think I actually like Marissa's approach, which is like restore mojo. Like, let's get some free food back in here. Let's get people
iPhones.
some non-fucking Blackberries. Let's bring this shit back into the present, make it a cool place to work. And I think that's actually the number one ingredient. I don't think it's necessarily about their ad or content strategy right off the bat. It's just like, why should someone work there?
Is there anyone she should buy? Is there like a big, bold move?
It's lowercaselc.com/posse. With all my portfolio companies.
You just said who would sell to Yahoo. I want to remind you.
So here's the funny thing. When it comes to being acquired, when one of my portfolio companies gets inbound acquisition interest, my number one rule is like, stop. Don't respond. Don't do anything. Because if you do, you're just playing defense, right? Like, so much of life comes down to offense and defense. If somebody offers you money for your company and you immediately respond, you have just let them set the table completely. Like, they have laid out everything, and you're just working with what's given. So I tell my entrepreneurs, like, walk away. Let's spend a weekend as a team and individually, like, thinking about what do we really want? Like, what matters to us? Money is a nice thing, right? And it's usually on everybody's list. And so we'll put money on there. But, like, is it how much money? Is it how much potential for more money later? Is it money now versus is it the potential to make money, but it might be risky, that kind of stuff. So we put that there. And we're like, what else? Do you want to be able to continue to work on this product? Does that matter? Or what if they just shut it all down and you get to work on something else? Does who your boss is matter? Does where you work matter? Like, where you have to move to? Like, all this shit. And we put it all on a list, and then we rank order it. And then with that list, I actually don't go back into the room as the negotiator. I send, like, the founding team themselves back in, because I think nothing is more convincing than an engineer who has already calculated the exact range of acceptable outcomes. Like, you put that guy in front of a hand-wavy bullshit MBA business, guy, and, like, it's totally fucking disarming, right? Because this engineer is just like, they don't know how to lie. There's no bluffing, right? So they're just like, no, that's just not going to work. Like, I have what's going to happen here. And that's not going to work. And they can do it better than you and I can. Like, they're really good at that shit. And so you just prep them. And what it does is it puts them back on offense. So I bring this up with a relation to, like, Yahoo, because I had a company recently that had that established a conversion rate for company dollars. Like, a Google dollar, let's say, was worth $1. And, like, Microsoft would have to pay $1.5 to every Google dollar to get the deal to go over there, because that was their individual team's perception of, like, what it would be like to work there, right? And maybe Twitter dollars trade at a discount, because it's a hip company and there's some upside left. And so that's just one thing on the spreadsheet. And
what was the Yahoo dollar trading at?
Yahoo wasn't a player then. Yeah, I mean, you can't. Yahoo's been absent for a long time. They just weren't. They weren't a tech company, and then they were kind of a media company, but not really, and they just got lost. Like, they've totally lost their way. And so
the problem is it's just too late, or is it the organization, or is it the product? I mean, what is going to foil her?
What's the biggest challenge she has is that the company is not owned by venture capitalists, it's owned by hedge funds. Venture capitalists are willing to sit on shit for years while the ship slowly turns around. And hedgies aren't. Like, so when I see the stock tick up, I feel happy for her, because I feel like it buys her a little bit more ramp to get the meaningful shit done. But hedgies don't have a long time frame. They need to return multiples quickly.
Right. I want to talk about Twitter, because you played a really important role with the company early on, and very good.
Is this a setup for, like, am I supposed to take credit for this, and then you get to write an article about how I take credit for shit I didn't do?
I love how you have given me total shit for asking basically one hard question, and then you just said about Marissa, like, people get really upset when women are in their face and ask hard questions, as you've demonstrated.
Really? You think that? You think? No, I'm just. Oh, Jesus.
You balked at one hard question. There's more coming.
Well, I think it was a bullshit question. Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with you being a woman. Like, that wouldn't have been a bullshit question either way.
I'm saying your reaction to it was funny, given you said.
You think I would have reacted differently if a man asked me that question? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying either of those.
You're
okay. You've now paper mache defensive on top of defensive. Let's scale this back. So,
Twitter.
I'm not setting you up for failure. I'm genuinely curious about your role early on with Twitter. You were friends with Evan.
Yeah, yeah. So most of the really successful investments on my roll of successes were not things I really picked out. They were things I got dragged into, and so this is called the opposite of taking credit, by the way. In case you're like keeping score, I'm giving some credit back right now, okay? But I had seen Twitter, I used it, I signed up early in 2006, and Evan went to put a round together, and he called me up and was like, hey dude, I'm putting a round together, I put you down for 25. 25, cool? Okay, 25, bye. And I was like, oh fuck, I don't really have $25,000. Like, it took me back till 2005 to get back to zero, which is, by the way, the richest you will ever feel in your entire life. When you were worth $0, you can finally make some choices again. Like, you can join the Peace Corps and no one's gonna track you down. Like no collections agency is up in your shit trying to find, like, so anyway, I left, when I ultimately left Google, I was worth like $1 million, which is a lot of money, but not a lot of money to be an angel investor. At the time I invested in Twitter, I was still working at Google, and technically, I didn't meet the SEC's accredited investor test yet, but I checked the box anyway, and wrote the check. My first angel investment, by the way, was PhotoBucket, and I got pulled into that one, and that was a credit card check I wrote. While I was working at Google, I wrote a credit card check to PhotoBucket. That panned out. My second angel investment was Twitter, and Ev was like, I got you down for 25, cool, and I was like, and so I wrote the check, and then I realized, fuck, I need this money back someday, so I better start showing up there and helping out. And so I just started going to 164 in South Park, where the original Twitter office was. No one invited me. I just started showing up. And I know I annoyed the shit out of Jack. I'm sure when he does a Pando, he'll say that. Like, it was too businessy for his taste. But I just was trying to help out with anything I possibly could because I really needed that money back someday. And so I can't take credit for anything in particular, Sarah. But
You're going to say this from now on.
Yeah, pretty much. No, I tried to help think about ways that Twitter would make money someday. I helped raise money over time. I mean, I spent a couple years just dropping in there. Those search deals, I negotiated those search deals until Dick got hired, and then I went and rode my bike across the country, and he took those deals over. There was one of the rounds that I raised and stuff like that. So I just tried to do anything I could and like put out fires when possible and just serve. I think good investors are in the service business, and it's funny that one of the reasons why the taking credit thing rubs me the wrong way is because I put so much effort into not taking credit for the things that my portfolio companies do.
To be fair,
and I have a big problem with VCs
I
who
think
do.
that was something that was specifically said about you at Google. I don't think it's something that's been said about you since.
Right on. Okay. I'm glad we dodged that. No, I think
But it bothers you when other investors do take credit.
Fucking bothers me a lot. Yeah. The art of self-promotion or taking credit for what a portfolio company has reached intolerable levels right now.
You think it's that much worse now than it was,
way
say,
worse.
a few years ago?
What were you going to do a few years ago? Wait in line for a industry standard article or something like that? Nowadays you can just tweet and path out your narcissistic bullshit all day long. And so, when one of your companies does well, to immediately insert your role in what that company did and take credit for the little bit. There's some old school investors out there. I look up to Bill Gurley a lot, and we don't have a political bone in common. But that guy doesn't say 3 sentences in a board meeting, but the 3 sentences he says are really, really high impact. And when the company needs something, he busts his ass on it all week long, gets it done, doesn't tweet about it, doesn't write a blog post about it, just empowers the entrepreneur who gets all the credit for it. That's the VC role. And I think we could all aspire to do more of that. And there's a generation of VCs who aren't doing that shit right now, who have become the stars, you know, who have become like, I mean, how many VCs do you know that have PR teams? Like literally have like PR on retainer. There's something fundamentally broken about that, right?
So, well, and it's increasing.
It's totally increasing. Like just trying to manage image and take credit for shit. So I think that's broken.
So Twitter is one of those companies I find fascinating because it is, you know, everything people say you should do as a company to be successful. Twitter's, you know, pretty much done the opposite of a lot of those, and it's the most interesting sort of private consumer company, you know, left. One of Twitter's investors has referred to it as a weed because they've done sort of basically everything to kill the company, and it's continued to grow on the strength of its product. You were very close in the early days. I know that you were close during, you know, both of the founder CEO ousters. So I'm curious what your take is on why Twitter continued to succeed, why it survived, you know, 3 CEOs, the board being turned over, all of this turmoil.
Yeah, a few things. I mean, that company should have died like 6 or 7 times for sure.
Right.
But I think the reason it's easy to say that is because, do you remember when Eric Schmidt said, Twitter is the poor man's email? You remember that? Like it was awesome because most founders would get really upset about something like that, right? And like, I remember I went right over to Ev's house and I was like, holy shit, I get it finally. I get why Google never really respected the Blogger team and why they never really gave him lots of resources and stuff like that. We used to think, is it because those guys didn't go to like fancy colleges or didn't go to college at all? Is it because they were SF hipsters and they didn't live in like suburban Mountain View? Like, why is it that nobody would invest in Blogger, like invest Google resources in Blogger despite it being independently the 9th largest website in the world? Never got the answer until Eric Schmidt said, Twitter is a poor man's email. And then it dawned on me, like, Twitter is not a hard science problem. It's an art problem. What Google specializes in are science problems. And they do it better than anyone on the planet. Just the shit they solve with search, I know like it always looks so simple from the outside, but like the depth of analytical prowess that goes into building that stuff is just second to none. But one of the reasons why Google has always failed at social is they don't understand the art problems. Like, and if you think about Blogger was a canvas. It was a canvas that you needed an expensive laptop and an expensive internet connection to paint on, and you also need to have like a working knowledge of punctuation and paragraphs and shit like that. But it was like it was a full-on canvas, and Twitter was that. Just even more accessible with like just a broader range of addressable participants. And the beauty of Twitter is in everything that's not there. And because there's not much there, it's easy to really underestimate it, right? And it's easy to be like, well, they can't keep the fucking site up, so there goes Twitter. But and everything I'm going to say now for the next 30 seconds is going to sound like just a hippie-ish Hallmark card, but the real value there was in the users. The real value is in the community and that movement that was created of expressing yourself there. Like, you can try and dissect it down to this graph or that graph, but it created a venue for people to express and curate, and it just didn't exist anywhere else. Everything else was too complicated, right? Like, Facebook tried to tell you what to communicate and how to communicate it, and there were too many rules. And to scientists, that was more interesting, right? Like, to Google, that was a little more interesting because it's like there's some complexity there. Like, Twitter was just so sparse. And like, credit to Jack for you know, being such a minimalist, you know, design weirdo in a way, like, you know, because that was where the real value came from. And you know, Ev also specialized in stripping shit away and like getting to the real core of it. I mean, if you think about it, like, Twitter is like a metaphysical challenge, like sitting around and like, what's a tweet, right? That's why in the beginning the growth was linear and not geometric. It was because you're just like, how do I explain to you what Twitter is? Because it's very different than what she would say it is, right? And yet Facebook you just get, right? And like Square you get, like, oh shit, I see what you do with Square. But Twitter you're like, wait, what is this thing? And I think, you know, Jack was the right person to invent that company and get it going. He's definitely a starter. He had a lot of vision. It was amazing. Ev is the philosopher king of product building. Like, Ev thinks more profoundly about community than anyone anywhere in technology. Like, and he questions assumptions that seem so obvious to us that you don't even realize it's an assumption you're making.
Mm-hmm.
And
can you give me an example?
Yeah, Ev and I were considering starting a venture fund together, back before Twitter really became a thing. And he's like, teach me about this venture business. How does this work? And I was like, well, this is how it works. You raise a bunch of money, and then you get to take a fee. So this is an amount of money you get paid every quarter just for showing up, and you get carried interest, which is a percentage of the profits. And he's like, so tell me why we get the fee. And I was like, because in the documents it says like you get this amount of money each quarter. And he's like, no, but tell me, why do we get the fee? I was like, because they'll fucking pay it to us. Like, that's, that's why. Like, and then suddenly Ed was off thinking about a new model for venture capital, and he wasn't really, up until that point, it was like his first day hearing about venture capital.
Right.
And he's already trying to reinvent it a little bit. And I'm like, dude, just let's get the fee and the kid, but if you think about what makes Twitter great, it's the things that aren't there. It's all the things that, it's all the ways they could have made money in the early days that would have fucked it all up. Mm-hmm. It's all the buttons that could have been there and would have clouded it up. It's all the files you could have attached to it and all the shit that Clerk and everybody were doing. I forget what there were 32 competitors at one point that everybody else were doing, and it was the absence of all those things. But eventually these things get big enough. There's enough headcount, there's enough real challenges, and there's a business that needs to get built. Mm-hmm. And so I deeply believe Dick is the right guy for that. And what's unique about Dick is I think it's very easy, in contrast to Ev, to paint him as the staid business guy and Ev is the product guy. Uh-huh. But Ev is no fucking spring chicken when it comes to making money, etc. He's done really well for himself. He knows how to get shit done. He knows how to buy companies, sell companies. Like, he's sharp. And Dick is just not a naive product guy. I mean, people forget Dick is a serial entrepreneur. Before he went to Google, he used to write this blog called Ask the Wizard. That was it was like the Fred Wilson of its time. Mm-hmm. It was like the definitive blog for entrepreneurs to figure out how to build shit. Like, he is a product guy through and through. And it's very easy to put them in boxes and say like one's, not. But Dick has this wide range of talents, among which is great product shit. I learned from Dick when I talked to him about product. Mm-hmm. And I think he doesn't get enough credit for how strong he is there. But he's also really good at making money too. Yeah. And building an organization and like being a great leader. And it shows. His team, all the political bullshit went away. The board's cleaned up. The team is really solid and awesome. Business is killing it. The site works. It's a great phase. So I think we had 3 CEOs who were the right CEO for the right phase of the company. Mm-hmm. And
do you think it was fair what happened to Jack and fair what happened to Evan?
No, it never is. Like, and I mean, I keep saying I'm going to relaunch my blog, and I have a post in draft, and like, the working title is "It's all fun and games until you raise a Series B." Like, I fucking hate Series B, C, D, E. It's the most political, backstabbing, evil, just the cognitive dissonance that happens in that stage of a company is just so painful, mm-hmm. particularly when building a company with people you know and love, like in friendships. And I think there's no upside in admitting that in Silicon Valley, frankly. I think like we all like to pretend it's a total love fest and everyone gets along and, and the greatest investors pal up to their entrepreneurs, but the betrayal that you will feel in Silicon Valley like cuts deeper than kind of any betrayal you'll feel at the 7th grade dance, when your date runs off. Like, it's so fucking deep. Like, I have been stabbed by entrepreneurs that have been personal friends of mine. Like, I have watched like VCs hang up the phone on one guy, lovey-dovey, and then just cut his fucking Achilles and, on another call. Like, it's just, it's not all love. It's not all hugs all the time. It's real business. The stakes are really fucking high. Like, forget even the egos. There's just a lot of money on the line, right? Yeah. There's a lot of power on the line. And shit gets personal. And then they all rush to tell their version to the paper. Like, the New York Times article about, like, Ev's role in pushing Jack out is bullshit. It was just whoever got to the Times faster to tell that story, right? And, like, So no, I don't think the way Jack was fired was fair. I mean, I was there. I was an advisor to the company. I was consulted on it, and the original plan was to just send him on his way. And I was like, you can't. And Dick Costolo was there too, actually. And Dick was the strongest voice of reason. He was like, you can't just send the fucking inventor of the product on his way, and not into the worst business environment in a long time. The guy, you can have arguments that maybe he's not the right person for the company right now, but he invented this shit. And he still has a lot to say about product, and he's still a very important voice and an important voice to the community. It was so it was Dick Costolo's idea to make him chairman, actually. And it was my idea to make sure we paid him a lot of money and got him his own lawyer to make sure that he wasn't feeling screwed in the deal, And I think sometimes VCs who haven't had jobs recently forget about that shit. But I'm sure Jack still holds grudges, et cetera, and he should. And the way, shit went down around Ev. I mean, ultimately Ev chose to leave, but the events leading up to that were shitty. And how fucking awful is that to have your company, the company that you've backed from the beginning, to have strangers kind of pushing around and the politics of that? It sucks. And yet it happens all the fucking time. I know the world gets good at euphemizing kind of is that a word, euphemizing? I don't know.
Yeah, for the purposes of this conversation.
Sure. At putting a lipstick on the pig of these HR events, and then the financings, et cetera. I mean, it's just horrible. And I think anyone who tells you otherwise either hasn't been in the game long enough or is just totally full of shit.
Right.
I think you have to have the thickest skin in the world to play in the startup world. I think even calling it a game is underestimating it. I think it makes it sound more fun than it really is. It's fucking grueling. You'll lose years off your life. You'll either undereat or overeat. You'll look over your shoulder. You'll get anxious. I mean, it's just nuts. And then you'll see those same guys at a cocktail party and pretend to smile, and it's not a nice little world. I figured I would say that just to take it off everybody else's shoulders to say it, because it's not, it's a tough message to deliver. But
I am amazed in the Valley at how many times people really come to some serious blows and then can sort of still be nice to each other. I mean, I kicked someone off my board and I'll never speak to that person again. And I talk to people in the Valley and they're like, oh yeah, but you guys are still friends, right? And it's like, no. What part of this was not bad enough? Why do you think, is it a fakeness? Is it just that people compartmentalize?
I had a lesson in this recently that I didn't talk about outside of Path, actually. I will. So there's this guy, Brett Bollington. Are we friends on Path?
We are. I saw your...
Okay.
I'm friends with Brett.
So in 2005 or 6, Brett Bollington betrayed a confidence of mine. He was an angel investor. I told him something confidentially. He leaked it. It fucked up a deal I was doing, an angel deal I was doing while I was still employed at Google. And I was very pissed off about that, and I just held a grudge. And Brett wasn't a central figure in Silicon Valley, so it was actually an easy grudge to hold because I didn't run into him a whole lot, et cetera. And he would try and friend me on Facebook, and I would just ignore it, And he'd send me a pitch every now and then, and I would pay no attention. And everybody who knows Brett says he's a great guy, but he objectively betrayed me. I rode my bike across the country in 2009, and Brett followed my tweets and heard about that trip and got inspired to do it, and so he left on that same trip this year. And he wrote me a couple emails. He was getting ready to go on that trip, and I ignored them, because Brett was an asshole to me in 2005. A couple weeks ago in Missouri, Brett was riding his bike and had an accident and his GPS says he was going 27 miles an hour, and he landed face first on the road, and has essentially been in a coma since then. And I just remember thinking, like, why did I hate this guy again? Because it cost me some shares in a bullshit company that doesn't even exist anymore, to make more money to buy shit I don't really need. And so that's why I didn't like this guy who was about to undertake, like, I consider that bike ride one of the most meaningful, cathartic journeys of my entire life. And like, here was this guy who was like, you know, joining my tribe, right? Like, and I ignored him. And so it's funny, like, as deep as those betrayals go and as personal as they feel, et cetera, like how fucking meaningful can they really be, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think having a kid, like I have a 1-year-old, you have a 1-year-old, like that changes a little bit of perspective. It reminds you of some things that matter, like dealing with life and death, dealing with people who are sick, dealing with people who are extremely poor, like return some of that context to you. Mm-hmm. And like, I still get really pissed off. I'm definitely part Italian, and I still get enraged and want to stab people when they betray me. And like, I still hold grudges, but they just feel so shallow and taken in that context, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why lately I've been kind of like looking past people who've been total dicks to me at some point, and like also reaching out to people that I think I've been a dick to a little bit, and just trying to, you know, like bury hatchets and shit. I got a yard full of hatchets, like all on the ground, but yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing. I read that on Path when you wrote it, and that was actually when I found out about Brett, because I've been traveling a lot, and I was in the airport with Paul Carr flying back from a New York Pano Monthly, and he had gone to get me coffee, and he came back, and I was crying, and he thought it was some internal thing, and I was so choked up I couldn't even talk about it, but it does put a lot of perspective. I have to say, it's hard for me. When you're building a company, that betrayal is acute. Mm-hmm. And that betrayal is more acute than I think two investors squabbling over a deal. But
well, I think you underestimate that. Like, I think this is another one of these things where put yourself in everybody's shoes, and it's just hard to say that your pain is harder than their pain, right? Yeah. It's
a fair point.
You know, when 63 people die in a storm, like all 63 of those people matter just as much as the others. Like, right? Each of them have a story that maybe they didn't invent something, maybe they didn't go to the right college, you know, but they're people. And I think an admin getting laid off feels an intensity of pain that, and maybe a more intense pain than a squabble. But it can also go the other way around. Like, when I go out to raise money for my fund, like, it may seem easier than raising money for your company. When you raise money for your company and somebody says no, internally you can blame it on the company. You can be like, oh, they didn't like the idea of my strategy. When you go out to raise money for your fund, and your fund consists of you, and you say, hey, give me some money, and someone's like, I'm going to pass on this one, it's because you suck. Like, there's no other explanation for it, right? So, like, talk about taking something personally. Like, it's because you literally, they have just rejected specifically you. And, you know, and then there are like Angelgate. Ron Conway raised most of us, you know, in the industry. Like, I wouldn't have been where I was in the industry without Ron. Like, and he was not only like my professional nexus, but my social nexus too. And like, when Angelgate happened, that my head spun, as well as everybody else. Like, you know, I wasn't even there, by the way. I was delivering a speech on the East Coast, but the grenade shrapnel got me. And but that shit hurt for the longest time. I had like an identity crisis. Like,
what hurt? That it came out? Ron's response? What?
No, that like, no, not Ron's response. Just basically that he cut a bunch of us off. You know, like a guy who we'd done a lot of business with, who I felt like I had kind of a mentor relationship with, who I used to share deal flow with and stuff like that. Like after enough of that, it becomes beyond professional, and I really look up to that guy. And when he kind of disowned some of us, like that really, really hurt. I mean, I had like an identity crisis. Like, can I be successful in Silicon Valley without Ron Conway? Was a question I quite literally asked myself and other people out loud. It was like, it hadn't occurred to me that I could do it without Ron before, you know? And I know I had that conversation with other super angels who are well known and probably wouldn't get on the stage and admit that, but, you know, and that felt really fucking intense. I mean, to have a guy like that come after you is pretty intense, right? Has he come after you before?
Oh, no, actually he has, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a long time ago.
Okay.
We have that hatchet is in the yard, yes.
Okay, cool.
I bury most hatchets. It's one or two that I have a hard time with.
Can we get back to talking about fun shit?
Yes, we can. Is part of this stuff the reason you moved to LA? I want to talk a little bit about the move to LA, because up until recently, a lot of people didn't even realize you were down here.
I'm not always down here, to be clear.
Right.
But I'm down here a lot of the time.
Well, you're back and forth between here and Tahoe, right?
In 2007, though, I don't know if people realize this, because all of you still write me emails asking to meet me in San Francisco, but in 2007, I moved to a town called Truckee near Lake Tahoe. So I left San Francisco full time. I did that for a very specific reason, and it goes back to offense and defense. So I'd left Google. I was going to do this investing stuff, but I realized I was living out of my inbox. Like, all these messages were coming in asking to get coffee, right? And I could have spent my entire day and then some getting coffees and never have accomplished anything at all. Like, and my friend Jason Shellen once expressed it, like I'm paraphrasing, but basically he said, your inbox is like publicly posting your to-do list for anyone else to add an action item to it, right? That gets attributed to me a lot, but I want to make sure I don't take credit for that. That was Jason Shellen. But
this is going to go on for like 10 years.
Sure. But it's true. Like, think about your inbox. Think about what's in there. Like, none of that is related to what you actually want to get done. It's everybody else needing something from you, taking a piece of you, right? You've got a to-do list somewhere, whether you're thinking it or you've written it down. That's all the shit you want to do. You want to travel, you want to write a book, you want to finally ask that girl out, you want to do all this shit, right? But that's all on this list. And yet your inbox has none of that. It's just a bunch of people who need TPS reports from you. Right? And so I realized, like, I was running out of excuses for not getting coffees. And so I was like, well, fuck it. If I don't live here, I can't get coffee. And so I bought a little house and I moved up to Truckee, and now I had this really cogent response for why I couldn't meet people. And I was like, you know what? Instead, just send me your deck.
You used it on me several times.
Yeah, but it was genuine. I mean, people who drove up there I met with, actually.
Well, this is one thing that interested me in having you here at All Things D. You were talking about how living in LA and Truckee had actually increased your ability to close deals because you would spend more quality time with people.
Yeah, so going on offense, so defense is your inbox, right? Going on offense is looking at your to-do list before you look at your email. Like, everyone here gets up and they check their fucking email, right? I mean, there is science that says it triggers a dopamine release, even if it's just a bunch of, like, the new J. Crew catalog and Fab, and like you already missed the sale and shit like that. It's just like you still are like, hey, messages for me. They've got my name on them. Like, and so there's like science behind that. And so it's hard to like not look at that and start your day from your to-do list. Like, what am I actually going to do today? Maybe you write it the night before. But if you take that and expand that concept, it was like, I realized I was only going to dinner parties that other people were organizing. I was responding to social invitations, but not hosting my own. And not spending time with the people I really wanted to spend time with. I was only reacting to other people's invitations. And so I was like, all right, well, if I move to Truckee, 3.5 hours drive on a clear day, 8 hours on a snowy day away from San Francisco, then what I can do is I can take the people who I really want to get to know better and invest in more and get them to come stay at my house. And you can learn so much more about somebody when they stay at your home. Like, cooking, like hanging out in the hot tub, jamming, going skiing, going for hikes, whatever, like, and really deeply getting to know each other and deeply going and thinking about the product is a way to go deeper with people than has ever be possible in in the casual Silicon Valley setting. And it's true. And when I think about like the friends I've gotten to know much, much better, the entrepreneurs who I've gotten infinitely closer with, almost all of them have come and stayed at our house. You know, my wife moved up with me there. I mean, now my wife, but then my girlfriend in like 2008. And it got to the point where our house was full of like young coders a little too often. So I don't have an office. So I basically took what a normal VC would budget for an office, and I bought the house next door. And I call it Camp Lowercase. And it's a retreat for the entrepreneurs in our portfolio. Anyone can go use it at any time. And so, so I get like all the upside of them staying with me, but I still kind of get my own bathroom and stuff like that. And it doesn't smell like young engineers. Do you know that smell?
I do. Well, but it's young reporters in my case, which is just as bad. Because we're a startup, whenever our reporters come in town for like the Pando Monthlies and stuff, or when we do retreats, I make everyone stay in my house. And we have to have like a janitorial crew of about 8 Salvatorian women who come in afterwards and just scrub it. I mean, it's one day, Ani and I were going over financials before a board meeting, and it was like one of my first board meetings ever, and I'm completely stressed out. And like one of our 19-year-old reporters just like kind of ambles stretching through my dining room, like wearing boxers and a tank top, and then grabs his pants off the dining room table. And I was like, what has happened to my house? So I know that smell well.
Nice. Yeah, so...
He loves when I tell that story.
What's the hashtag cool story, bro? Yeah.
You asked
Sorry,
if I knew the smell. You're just being a dick to get back to me for that question. All right, there's like 3 more things I want to ask you about for sure.
Is there a time limit to these?
I mean, we're like so packed. No, there's not. It's will people stay seated, and they're still seated. So there's 3 more things I want to ask you about for sure, and then I want to.
And then do they get to ask questions?
Yeah,
okay, good.
Yeah, you're in here for a while.
No, that's good.
Be glad you don't have a baby sitting on your bladder. So it's the.
Do you need to take a break?
No, I'll be fine.
Paul would definitely come up here and entertain. I have no doubt.
Are you sick of me? Do you want Paul? Is that what you're saying?
No, he could be like your Ed McMahon, though. You know, like he could be like your Andy Richter and just throw shit out from time to time.
Okay, we haven't explicitly talked about Lowercase Capital. We've talked about you as an investor. You know, when you first launched it,
this is an we question again. Yeah.
Is it?
Well, Lowercase Capital consists of 2 people.
Right.
Me and my COO, who runs the back office from day to day. Yeah. So I guess we're a we.
You're officially a we.
Yeah.
Is that the only 2-person firm that manages $1 billion?
I don't know. That's a weird question. Do you have like interns who can fact check shit like that? I don't know. It's probably unique for what we do. And it's probably unique for this space.
And how would you describe what you do?
I get pulled into investments that I later get to take a lot of credit for. I work with young companies to do. I try and work with outfits to get them to a point where I'm no longer needed, like where I'm obsolete. Josh Koppelman, who's a mentor of mine, says like, he wants to be unnecessary by the Series B, you know? And I've tried to model myself after that. Right. So I meet young teams who don't have a business guy. Maybe they don't have a true user experience guy. Maybe they don't have a conversion guy or gal, by the way, I'm using it interchangeably. But like, they just don't have some of those members of the team. And I can do enough of each of those things to be dangerous and maybe get you to your Series A, you know? And so I come in and just do what needs to be done, whether it's helping raise money or sell the company or redesign the front page or do some multivariate testing or work on the growth or get the message out by calling people like you and saying, hey, these guys are worth paying attention to, or just generally talking them through when their boyfriends or girlfriends dump them, that kind of stuff, and like, okay, get back to coding. But I do all of that stuff. What I don't do is, like when I brought up Bill Gurley, we were in a meeting recently where a company was looking for a CFO. And Bill Gurley opened a folder and had resumes from 5 or 6 CFOs who were ready to go. And I was like, holy shit, I don't know 5 or 6 CFOs, let alone those who are vetted and ready to work at a company like this. It was amazing. There are guys who add value at a scale.
Right.
building out a serious management team, building out a board that's worthy of an IPO and stuff like that. That's not what I do. Like I get stuff going. I think sometimes VCs, they don't want to admit that there's a point where they become useless, and so they hang on because it's really fucking cool to still be on the board of that company. So one of the things I do is I'm not actually on any boards, and I just say to the company, like, look, we're going to have a great relationship up until the point where you find me useless, and then you'll just stop inviting me to the meeting. So, and that happens. It happened to me recently. Like, I'm just not as useful to that company anymore. And so, but in the beginning, like, we don't need a document that says I'm a board member to dictate our relationship. You're either going to call me to be helpful or not. You know, we're either going to be close or not. So, so that's what I do on the early side. On the late stage side, I do a hodgepodge of stuff. So one is I write very big checks to late stage companies that you probably haven't paid much attention to yet, but I know are experiencing geometric growth, and I want to fund them under the radar before anyone else is paying attention. I like to invest opportunistically. If everybody's here, I'm there.
Right.
And so I have put a lot of money to work doing that, and it's been very successful. And
what's a very large check for you?
I've written a $400 million check, but traditionally like 50. And
that's just you. There's no syndicate.
No, that's me. And that's a fund. You can go look at SEC filings. You know, it's my name. You have to list who your partners are. It's me. It's we. No. It's
you
us.
and the Salingers.
Yeah. But no, it's that was a weird part of my business. That happened by accident. That was not part of my master plan. But like I started buying a lot of Twitter as people were leaving the company in the early days. They needed like a little money for a house, so I wrote them a check out of my checking account. I became increasingly bullish. So I got pulled in the first round, but then I started to get it and was like, okay, this is a thing. And I ran out of money. I quite literally didn't have any money left to buy Twitter shares. So I went out and raised a fund just to buy Twitter. And that was $11 million, and I put it all to work. And then I raised another one that was $40 million. And then I raised another one that was 25, and then 6, and then a bigger one. And in the process of raising money for that, I kind of developed a thesis that Twitter wasn't the only company this would make sense at. So I went and raised against that thesis and talked some people into doing it. And I never put on a suit, by the way, during that whole process. I only dressed like this, like an unemployed rodeo clown.
Well, you look at a fancy one tonight. You have the black cowboy shirt on.
Same
Very
brand,
formal.
though. This is I always wear the same brand. It's Scully. Available at vintagewesternwear.com, as a matter of fact. I'm not an owner, but they take care of me. But yeah, it was an accident that happened. I don't really do that anymore because so many other people are doing it. So I do other things opportunistically that other people aren't doing. And that's what I try and do, is just go where other people aren't.
Right.
So
How much of Twitter do you own?
a lot.
Greater than 5%?
Yeah.
Guess we'll find out when that
I guess
IPO
we'll find out
comes up.
someday. Yeah.
Do you think Twitter's going to go public anytime soon?
This is one of those questions where I think if I answered it, I would be in trouble.
You'll go
with
to
somebody.
jail.
Yeah. I think Twitter should be an independent company. Like, I'm opposed to Twitter selling the company to anybody. Like, the company has I don't know what words Dick has used to describe it, but just a lot of fucking money on its hands and is in no rush to go anywhere anytime soon. The business works. They're recruiting the best talent. Like, they don't lose recruits to anybody in the Valley right now. And so why fuck that up right now? You know, like, why take on the headache of everything that's involved with an IPO? But at the same time, like, it feels like Google to me. Like, again, it's an easy thing to underestimate. And I know that's a weird thing to hear, and it's easy to be like, 140 characters, what? But it feels like Google did when Google was just about to blow the fuck up and go big. And anyone who's not convinced of that can just give me their Twitter stock. So
You're still buying Twitter stock?
I still buy Twitter stock.
Can you tell me other sectors that you're writing these massive 50 million to 400 million checks to?
I'm not writing those anymore, other than just I still buy Twitter stock off people.
Okay.
But too many people got into that shit. Like,
Okay.
Like, I was never like a Zynga shareholder, but like people were trading Zynga at $11 billion right before it went public, and I think it's worth $1.5 or $1.75 billion today. Like it got really popular. Like hedge funds thought they were VCs, and investors became traders, and shit got crazy. So when the money all goes somewhere, the prices go up, and there's no money left to be made. And I think there was another phenomenon where like an entire generation of VCs didn't have hot companies on their websites anymore. So they all came in and bought shares in hot companies really, really late and really, really expensively, just because they needed to buy their way back in,
sort of NASCAR
and
thing.
rebrand a little bit. And so it's, that's depressing. I hope you're not an investor in any of those. Yeah.
Me, I'm not an investor in anything.
It's too bad. Yeah.
Poor reporter. I don't have the money for that.
But the other thing I pay attention to is the intersection of technology and media. So I actually have a fund that focuses on LA. And like until you mentioned it, I don't think I'd really told people that I live down here like half the time. I've just been kind of under the radar going to stuff, but not really telling anybody. But have done a few deals in town that kind of at the intersection of media and tech. I think enough, like I don't want this to be a fulfilling like fucked up prophecy and like ruin the opportunity, but I think there's this culture down here of where VCs up north have all had their asses kicked by media at least once by media investment, because media investments used to be about piracy, basically, and so they've all lost their asses before, and so it's got this bad name down here. But we've got this entire generation of digitally native content. VCs up there have lost their asses because they've invested in online media where there were no viewers, because it was so hard to have the right media player and the right codec, and like enough bandwidth behind it, and Flash solved all that, and HTML5 on top of that now. And so we have big audiences now. Like VCs up there all lost their asses because no advertisers wanted to advertise on any of this shit, but you look at companies like Rev3 now and guys like Big Frame and stuff, and they're doing like they're literally commanding TV level CPMs on a lot of their media. Like VCs up there didn't want to invest in this shit because there was no real revenue model. It's monetized premium content. You got companies like VHX who are building some of the easiest payment gateways to sell content ever. And so Aziz Ansari is launching his comedy specials there. And like you put all this together, and it's like there's just so much inertia up there preventing people from coming down here and investing. And then you look down here, and there's a few LA native firms that are doing it, but a lot of the content companies and studios and agencies themselves have proven they're not very good venture capitalists per se, and they make better partners, et cetera. And there's just this kind of void where true technology companies in the media space have been just kind of like ignored for a while. I mean, this is one of those companies here, Zephyr. I mean, that's what they do. Like they have a bunch of engineers who have built systems to optimize claiming and monetizing content. And like companies like that don't get a lot of attention down here, and yet, and also they're a little bit ignored among the legacy investors up there. That company's broken out and done really well, but so it's an opportunity that I've been exploiting.
How big is your LA fund?
I don't think we talk about it specifically, but it's big. Was I supposed to say more? Oh,
That would have been nice.
yeah.
What else are you doing right now? Are you still doing traditional seed investing? Are you still doing, backing Valley companies? You're not doing the larger checks as much. Anything that you're doing that's sort of not where the crowd is?
No, I'm doing traditional seed companies. Like that's most of my time right now. But that market got ugly for a while. Like there was just a real sense of fucking entitlement in the seed industry. Like just, I got really tired of just having people tell me that their company that was 12 weeks old is worth $11.5 million pre, and then I had to decide right there over that initial meeting or over that initial phone call whether I was in or not, because the round was already soft circled for everybody, and maybe they could find 25 grand worth of room for me in that company. And it was just like the whole balance of power had gotten like thrown off. I mean, I think Paul Graham has been one of the most positive forces in startups ever, in that he shifted the balance of power away from the business speakers to the coders.
Yeah.
I mean, in the first generation of the web, 1.0, it was like it cost millions of dollars to write your first line of code, so you had to raise money on the back of a business plan. That business plan had to be written by an MBA. That MBA took it to a venture capitalist. The venture capitalists back then were ex-bankers because they needed to liaise with the bankers who would ultimately take you public, and shit went public every week. Like just, it was crazy. It was like this whole kind of Wall Street orgiastic convention. And when that all got shut down, all the fair weather banker guys left town. And guys like Paul Graham stepped up and went to the coders and were like, you know what, I can actually teach you this stuff. It's not as complex as you think it is. I can demystify the legal papers, and I can demystify the business terms. And you could be a business guy even though that may not have ever been something that occurred to you, even though you were kind of a math geek up till now, And so he created a whole new generation of empowered entrepreneurs that I think was amazing. And it helped shift who the successful VCs were now, because a technical founder wanted to interact with an experienced product or technical VC,
right,
whose job was not to take this thing public because nothing went public forever, but instead to convince a product or technical head at one of the kind of 6 or 7 usual suspects who would acquire your company to buy it. And so it shifted the entire demographic who does this work. And that was a really healthy shift. But along the way, there was nothing to keep, there was no check to balance out the ego and entitlement that happened with a really young generation of entrepreneurs. And we have, I think, the widest range of people who have been attracted to this space because it's cool and there's a lot of money to be made. So we've got the people who would have been here anyway.
Yeah.
And then we've got the people who, when they get a bad performance review, their mom calls up, we've got, one of the things I think happened that fucked the Valley up is that when I was so I'm 37, right? The generation my age at Google that had computer science degrees still had summer jobs when they were growing up, and worked during college and waited tables and mowed lawns and washed cars and shit like that. They'd actually worked before. There's a generation below me that when they went to school for computer science at the big schools, their programs were fully endowed, and so they had all kinds of grants. They didn't really pay to go to school.
Right.
The toughest job they ever had was TAing a class. And we saw this generational shift. These people would come to Google and treat our chefs like absolute shit. We had 600 full-time chefs, many of whom had postgraduate degrees themselves and stuff like that. And they would absolutely bark at these people with this entitled, so we're out of fucking pheasant? What? And yeah, it got bad. And I've seen that entitlement start to creep into the startup culture. They're the actual killer. There are guys like Kevin Systrom, who just is a slayer, who worked by himself alone at Pier 38 for a long, long time on bourbon without getting any credit for it and taking a big risk and doing it. And then there are just the fair weather dudes who, I haven't seen this new Bravo show, but the trailer, I think we're in poser town. And I've just seen a generational shift that I think is poisonous. And so I've been very, very selective about seed stage stuff. Putting more effort than before into getting to know the personalities of the people I'm backing, and making sure that they're real. And but I've been doing deals, a lot of deals. I think there are some pretty fascinating, powerful people in their early 20s who are just crushing it right now.
Do you think that balance of power is shifting back at all? There's a lot of, I think, wishful thinking on the part of seed investors that the sort of impact of the Facebook IPO would have trickled down and diminish some of that, and I've heard it's not really happening.
It kind of is. What it is it moved from a maximization exercise to an optimization exercise, right? People are starting to realize, I think the role of the value-added investor was kind of lost along the way, where basically kids would go raise party rounds where there was no lead investor, right? And it was awesome. They would just stand at a YC or something like that and be like, sign up here if you want 25 grand. And before you know it, you've taken 50, 25 grand checks, but there was no one actually there to work with you. And taking checks from angels at 25 is great. And when you call upon them for help, they'll help you. but there's no one there to kind of keep you honest, to come back to you, every month and be like, what did you accomplish this month? Let's have like a fake board meeting, but talk about what's going on next month, what problems you need solved, et cetera. And so without that kind of counterpart, shit goes sideways for a while.
Yeah.
And it can kind of get lonely. And I think there's a bunch of founders who realized like, it may have felt cool taking money from the widest number of people at the highest price possible, but they're missing something from the equation.
Right.
And that's like an actual partner in your business. And so I think we're seeing a shift back to, it's not necessarily about taking the most amount of money. It's about hopefully getting the right people involved and then keeping them honest on the price. They're not taking advantage of you. Mm-hmm. Sahil Lavinga at Gumroad raised a round at far less than he could have from the broader market, but to make sure that he got a chance to work with a group of us that he considered helpful and valuable to him, and then later went and did a big round with KP. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing that happen more often now, is that rationality is returned.
Right.
But meantime, like at the middle to late stage, like it's so easy for a company to say like, oh, we're at 300 million now, we're going to raise it 800 million, in a couple months. And like 800 million is a lot of money. And there are very few companies that exit for a multiple of 800 million.
Right.
Like there's only a couple on this latest generation that have a chance of doing that. And I think it's just been very easy for VCs to kind of forget that. And, in the essence of trying to pad their own reputation, et cetera, just throw more money at it and hopefully, think of how VCs get paid too. Like they get to place a lot of bets. And if those bets don't pay off, it doesn't matter because nobody realized those bets didn't pay off until they've already raised their next fund. Right? So they get to spread like their bets across a few funds. And if any of those pay off, they get paid on those and they don't have to offset their losses against it. It's like a totally rigged, awesome game. Oh, and by the way, they get to take like 20% of all of that just off the top for playing. And so it's a really awesome game. And so their incentives are like place big, big, big bets on big, big, big outcomes. And if they pan out, they get rich. And if they don't have to cover their losses. Mm-hmm. And so it's really easy for a VC to walk in and be like, hey, I know you think your company's cruising along at 300 million now, but let's put in some more money, valued at $1 billion, and let's go big,
Yeah.
And VCs who say that, it's just very easy because A, they have portfolio theory. They've got a bunch of different companies that may pay off. And B, VCs are already rich. And so it's so easy for them to look you in the eye and be like, hey man, don't be a pussy, let's do this. Like, and like, let's roll the dice and go for it, et cetera. And like, you can be $1 billion company. And yet there's nothing to like, they don't have to hedge, whereas you might. And so I think that's driven like this just mania in the B, C, D, E stages where there's just no coupling of the prices to the actual outcomes at all. And so once again, all fun and games till you raise a Series B,
Mm-hmm. All right, I want to go to questions from the audience, but I have one more thing I have to ask you about because
Paul Carr was just about to go on
strike. I won't put an adjective on it, but we've been writing about Uber quite a bit on our site lately. And
you don't say.
You are a significant investor in Uber. I think this is interesting, particularly with you, because I've been having a lot of conversations with Uber's investors, not surprisingly. But you are very well known as a very proud Democrat who played a big role in Obama's election. You're very political online. A lot of Paul's thesis is that, there's this Ayn Randian ugly streak of libertarianism that's co-opted disruption in Silicon Valley, and he puts up Uber as sort of the poster child for that. That seems philosophically at odds with a lot of the things you believe. I'm curious where you stand on all this.
So I've read all these pieces, and a lot of them focus on Travis Kalanick, the co-founder and CEO of Uber. Travis has like the Atlas Shrugged book cover as his avatar on Twitter. So
Fountainhead.
Fountainhead, yeah, sorry. So it's not speculation that he's Randian or whatever. And I presume that Travis and I probably won't vote for the same person next week. There's a couple of different ways. At a personal level, like I can see multiple phases at my life where the commons have made it possible for me to thrive or continue. When I got laid off in 2001, I collected unemployment. Like I Again, to go back to the earlier story, it's not something you brag about when you're collecting it, right? You wait till you make a lot of money, and then you tell that story about how the government took care of you. But there's so much stigma attached to it. But I would not have been able to stay in Silicon Valley had I not filed for public benefits. Like, period, end of story. I went to school on federally subsidized student loans. My parents and I wouldn't have been able to afford to pay for college had I not borrowed money from the U.S. government, like loans from private lenders guaranteed by the U.S. government. It just wouldn't have been possible. And we'll forget roads and bridges that we didn't build. But I think sometimes arguing with libertarians can be really frustrating, because I think it can be intellectually lazy, and I think it can be convenient. And in the same way that when everything's going right, it's easy to attribute it to your own success, and when things are going wrong, it's because you got fucked or you're unlucky, etc. I think sometimes the libertarian point of view can be rooted in a limited set of circumstances where you give yourself a little more credit than you want, or than you're due, probably. That said, to come back to Uber, where that breaks down a little bit for me, or I deeply believe in a regulated world. I mean, to say things as reckless as abolishing the EPA, et cetera, is just reprehensible. And I'm sure none of you will vote him in as president. But I've worked firsthand with Uber and these taxi commissions now, and have been asked by the team to help when I can, and have been in meetings where the nature of these rules are made clear, et cetera, and they're almost all entirely corrupt. I mean, and corrupt is not a word I use lightly. I think the carriers are a real pain in the ass, right? And the way they manipulate rules, et cetera. But it's kind of like a savviness. It's kind of this you have to respect their evil genius at how they do this shit, You're oh, foiled again, And so when I fought those guys, they were kind of I could kind of respect them
sort of a
as
chess
an adversary.
match.
Yeah, but what goes on at the taxi commissions is disgusting. I mean, I don't know if any of you followed what happened in D.C., but the commissioner made up a bunch of shit, couldn't point to the rule that Uber was supposedly breaking, seized a car from an Uber driver. Remember, that car doesn't belong to Uber. It belongs to the poor guy from Virginia who is driving it, right? So they take his car from him and then can't point to the rule that was broken at all. And once they get so frustrated that they can't point to the rule that's broken, they go and write some very specific rules that are called the Uber amendments, is literally what they're labeled, that are written just to make sure Uber can't do business in that town. They have no actual basis in providing more universal service, regulating price. In fact, the DC rule said that Uber's price had to be X times higher than any other service offered in the town. Who the fuck does that? How can you possibly, as a city representative, mandate that a price has to be higher than a certain level, right? And so I think when you've been working in the face of that city after city, you probably, and I'm not speaking for Travis, but you probably walk into a city with the default assumption that the people working against you don't have the best interests of their citizenry at heart. And I think I have enough data points now in interacting with these cities that, at least at the taxi commission level, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been controlled by these taxi lobbyists that have just written shit in place. I mean, who is happy with their taxi service anywhere in America? Nowhere is the level of service. No, they're not really happy. Ask them how many 311 calls they get on the report a taxi line. Ask them what the level of satisfaction is with that service, really. People choose it as a way to get around that city, but nobody at scale is gonna tell you that they fucking love the New York taxi system, right?
I actually don't think that's true. I know a lot of New Yorkers who all you have to do is go outside of New York, come to San Francisco, you will love the New York taxi system. And I think this is the point. What you're
No,
saying
I mean,
about
that's
DC
just
is
like false
absolute-
logic. Saying like getting poked in the eye hurts a lot less than getting nailed in the shins. I mean, just
No, that's not what I said.
no.
That's not what I said. You're twisting
I mean,
my
there's
words.
just clear data that at scale, like the New York taxi system is not solving a problem. Can you catch a cab at 4:30? Have you been able to catch a cab at 4:30?
The New York
They don't
taxi
exist.
system is not solving a problem.
It's not solving a problem
The
at
fact that it's the
scale.
only city where I can walk outside and other than shift change, immediately get a cab
No, I
is
just
not,
asked- I
the
just-
fact that there's regulations around it so
do
that it's a
people's
$50 ride
when do
from
people's
the
work
airport.
days wrap up traditionally? Isn't it weird that it's during shift change? Isn't it weird that that entire market
I think to take
drives
one
out
thing
to their
and say they're not
warehouses?
solving any problems.
No,
when
isn't that
it's pretty
strange?
actually amazing how well the New York taxi system
But if it were
works
really
is
a
little
market,
disingenuous.
don't you think maybe there'd be cabs available at the times when people are leaving work? Or is it weird that the cab drivers actually stop working at the same time that other people stop working and need transportation? That's surreal,
Let me
right?
ask you this
If it were,
directly.
I mean,
Let me ask you
they're
this directly.
everywhere at 3 o'clock.
First of all, I can't think of a time I've left work at 4:30 in my career, but let me ask you this directly because this is what we have heard from people very close to the company, that when it came to DC, everyone was behind Travis's behavior and how he took on the city because it was bullshit. When it came to New York, he went off the rails. And if you look, that's when sentiment changed around the company.
Well, sentiment change around the company is a very strong phrase because I've read your pieces. I think they're very interesting, but I think to say that there's been a sea change of sentiment around Uber is a really bold claim. It's taking a lot of credit.
No, I don't think we are taking credit. In fact, I don't at all. I know you're taking an opportunity to make a joke, but I don't think we are. I think we hit on a nerve that a lot of people were feeling because when I've written stuff or commented negatively about Uber pre-New York, man, do you get angry letters because people loved that company. And we published our first article on that. I thought, we are going to be in such a shitstorm. And we weren't. Quite the opposite. And if you got the volume of emails we got, we're not alone, Chris.
I completely
It was
understand.
absolutely a shift
I understand,
in sentiment.
No, I don't think it's a
and
shift
I don't
in sentiment.
think we
Like,
did
I
it
think
at
that's a
all. I'm not
company that's-
claiming credit.
It's a company that grows by leaps and bounds. People use it religiously. Once you've ridden Uber for 3 times, you'll ride it for the rest of your life. I don't think there's been a big shift in sentiment. I mean, it would have been the same shift then that happened New Year's Eve when they didn't advertise surge pricing that well. Like, that might have been a big shift in sentiment. I was really worried. I mean, surge pricing makes sense in terms of balancing supply and demand.
So
it wasn't communicated very
no
well.
issue with how they've handled the New York thing at all? You think it was the same thing as DC? He was fighting for the common man.
No. So, but you're asking about, I'm talking about a shift in sentiment. If you want to talk about the New York thing, like, I just think, like, to say that people are surrounding Uber with, like, torches
That's
and
not what I
pitchforks
said.
or whatever,
That's not what I said.
But I think
And by the way, I don't think we've probably impacted a dime of revenue from Uber. So I'm not saying that either. I think it is still one of the most probably promising companies in Silicon Valley. But to say that there has not, in that period of time, been a shift in sentiment is bullshit, and you know it.
I just don't. Let's talk about what matters. Let's talk about the New York part, okay?
Okay.
So, Travis is very, like, in your face, combative. That's how he likes to take these on, and it's been very, very effective. So, New York City had a process, and maybe Travis's style of, like, hey, let's just go do it and go renegade doesn't necessarily work well with a process, right? And so maybe people could have been critical of Travis saying, hey, look, I'm going to go, like, smash mouth at these guys, and they're like, no, we're going to do an RFP, et cetera. But anyone who said that, Travis just got vindicated the day they just released their draft rules the other day. Their draft rules coming out of New York are an absolute fuck you to anybody who's trying to innovate in the realm of transportation there whatsoever. There is no room for technological advancement. There is no room for a marketplace. There is no room for anyone to work outside of the bullshit lockdown TLC structure whatsoever. And so it doesn't send a clear message to everybody else that they should play within that system, right? And I agree with Paul's sentiment that regulations exist for a reason, and we can't have free-for-alls, and we can't, like, the housing crisis is a perfect example of when the evisceration of regulation led to a catastrophe, right? And it's weird nobody's really gone to jail for that, et cetera. Like, I absolutely believe that markets don't solve problems in a completely unregulated world. But when the regulators are not actually acting in the interest of the people, I have a real problem with that. And I know they weren't in DC, and any argument that they were in New York just became moot when they released their draft rules a couple days ago. So I haven't talked to Travis, but he's probably got a big smile on his face. That's my guess.
So no issues, no conflict between everything you said about how the government helps and the way they run their business. I just want to make sure we're on the record and clear about this.
I'm very much on the record, it turns out. There's a few people here and I have a microphone.
Right. No, I just want to ask it explicitly.
Don't tell anyone about this. No, there's a lot of things here.
Make fun of me all you want.
No, there's a lot of things here. Are we talking about like the Randian subculture? By the way, I didn't even know that was a word, but it's awesome. Randian. Who, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but she received Medicare benefits late in her life.
I think that was in our story, one of them. It just seems like a personal and professional conflict for you. That's why I'm asking.
There's a Venn diagram, and there's some overlap between that and Uber, but they're not two completely all-inclusive subjects. I think, it's totally fucking weird that I have libertarian LPs, and meaning investors in my fund, and I look at their tweets sometimes and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? That's really naive to think that that if we give everybody, if we stop charging taxes, that charity will take care of it all. That, we'll just redistribute the wealth charitably and we'll all look after each other. You only need to know 3 or 4 totally fucking greedy, self-obsessed, narcissistic assholes to know that's never gonna work, right? And when it comes to charity, you take off 4 or 5 zeros and people feel really magnanimous. They will not hesitate to buy $1 million house. But when it comes to a charitable contribution, if they give you $1,000, they want a massage and a stroke and a plaque and their name all over the fucking thing, and that won't work out. It will, we won't all just voluntarily contribute. It works one time for Radiohead's In Rainbows album, and it works one time for Louis C.K., right? And then it doesn't work again. I'm sorry if you're the next comedian trying to give your shit away and be like, oh, pay me what it's worth. You'll get 0. And so, no, we can't just count on benevolency to work this shit out. It doesn't work. At scale, it doesn't fucking work. Travis is the kind of guy I love having those heated discussions with. Travis has come up to Tahoe multiple times and gotten gnarly and over multiple beers, dug into these issues. I have fundamental differences with how libertarians see the world. By the way, I don't know how libertarian he really is sometimes, Travis came with me to the Obama inauguration. He was a donor. I say that only because it's public record somewhere. Sometimes I wonder if it's a character, and it's if it's a contrarian thing within the Valley. We kind of have this groupthink around being Democrats. I raised a couple $1 million for the president this time around from Democrats, and it's like sitting ducks in Silicon Valley, and so maybe sometimes it's just fun and challenging to think the other way. That said, I think he might actually believe some of that stuff too, but that's not necessarily a one-for-one overlap with how Uber is run. It doesn't necessarily inform exactly how Uber works with every city that it interacts with. It doesn't dictate the brand of Uber. I think that's where that breaks down a little bit. It's just not Travis isn't Uber all the time. Just none of Ev, Jack, or Dick are Twitter, right? They're all different flavors of it. They're all big influences on it. I don't know.
Right.
If Paul thinks I'm full of shit, he should get in the crowd and ask during the Q&A. But I think if you really look at the timeline of what happened in New York the other day, I think once Travis became aware of what happened in New York, at least what I've been told, I wasn't there, but they cut off surge pricing, paid their drivers double, and stopped taking a fee. Like there are people, including Paul, who think that's disingenuous, that it was about getting those drivers to drive on the Uber network and not other places.
Well, that's what one of their investors said tonight. I mean, let's be clear, that didn't come from Paul. What Uber said, I mean, I'm just putting facts in the record because it's not really fair to throw him under the bus.
No, I didn't throw Paul under the bus at all.
You said Paul thinks they were getting drivers on the network. I just want to be totally clear for people who weren't following this, because this was kind of playing out on Twitter as before we were on stage.
I was actually trying to.
That's okay.
I was trying to air the other side. Actually.
So, what Uber said, what they said, the reason they had to pay drivers double is they would not come out and drive otherwise. What one of their investors said, not a couple hours ago, was, we had to do this because they would drive for other networks and not for Uber. And I think I'm not nearly as extreme as Paul is on this, by the way. As most people know, I don't tell, people like Paul what to write on our site. I do have a problem with the disingenuousness and the way that stories change, and I have a problem with this sort of Robin Hood story of Uber. It's the disingenuousness that I think is where they lose some people, and that's an example of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer to that question. I wasn't at Uber, and I haven't spoken to those guys about that. I heard from one of the guys who worked there kind of what I thought the sequence of events was. But I think if you do actually just talk to your Uber driver, like, you realize there is something pretty beautiful about that company.
Totally agree.
I think there's something about, like, when you're starting a company, just like when you're starting a fund or when you're laid off and looking for work in Silicon Valley, like, throughout every other part of your life, you've had a parent, a teacher, a coach, a professor, like, looking after you, somebody asking where you are when you don't show up, that kind of thing, or like, who's got your best interests at heart. And suddenly you go to start one of these things and there's no one actually looking after you. Mm-hmm. And, you ask questions about, like, why did you keep struggling? Why did you keep trying and stuff like that? A parallel question is like, so what if you didn't? Like, who's going to miss you? It's like the but for. Like, an entrepreneur is the proximate cause for the next achievement for their company.
Right.
Without them, it doesn't happen. In that pattern of thinking, and when you see kind of the lives that Uber has changed, it's probably really easy to start believing, like, that the company impacts the destiny of a lot of people who work for it, as well as a lot of riders. Mm-hmm. And to work in that kind of environment and then walk in and have a regulator. I mean, when the San Francisco TLC started cracking down on Uber, same thing. Point to what rule Uber breaks. Couldn't fucking do it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not an electronic waybill thing. They just couldn't fucking do it. I don't think anyone's disagreeing
in those cases.
And so if you grew up in that environment, like, literally, like, you grew your company up there, it's just really hard to take some of those regulations seriously. Yeah. Right? And, who here actually turns their fucking phone off on the airplane? Like, seriously, right? It's just like, when the door closes, you're still like, because it doesn't fucking matter. It was a rule that was propagated by the phone companies because they didn't like all those phones attaching their towers and detaching from their towers and putting load on those towers. It has nothing to do with the communication systems of the airplane whatsoever, right? Mm-hmm. So you look at that and you're like, fuck you, FCC, fuck you, FAA, this is bullshit. Like, this is not grounded in any kind of actually protecting human life whatsoever. If it were, they would take all your fucking phones away, right? If it were really dangerous, they wouldn't trust any of us with our fucking phones, right? And so I think, like, with that in mind, you look at some of these regulations and you're like, it's farcical, it's bullshit. Yeah. They were put in place by moneyed interests to protect their business advantage. And so I understand where a guy like Travis comes from when he's working on a company like that. Like, you can debate all day long tactically, should he come with love, or should we have a peacetime consigliere and a wartime consigliere, et cetera? But the truth is, Uber is trying to shake up something that has been very staid for decades and decades, and so far he's doing a pretty good job of it.
Mm-hmm. All right, we should take some questions from the audience before we hit midnight. Ani, are there microphones somewhere? Are we passing? Are they going somewhere? What are people?
Jesus, it's late.
I know. These people they're all running for the microphone. No one's possibly leaving to beat traffic.
Are there still more beers?
all
Could
right.
they just distribute like another round?
No. Hello. All right, if some people have to leave, I totally understand, but please kind of keep the hubbub down so we can hear questions.
Oh, is there a microphone there?
Yeah, there's one right there behind
Oh,
that
right on.
camera.
Hey Chris, my name's Rob, SoCal Rob on the Twitters.
Oh, right on. I've seen you. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had an exchange. A couple weeks ago, you mentioned you were at the Shark Tank studios,
Yeah, I was at the Shark Tank studio.
and I had basically asked. You'd said, I should pitch something. What should I pitch? And I basically said, well, you should instead just try to join the panel, because that'd bring a really interesting kind of slant to Friday night prime time. And I'm curious if they made a
Don't
real.
you have better things to do on Friday night than watch Shark Tank?
Well, no, I watch the Twitter feed, so I see it's popular. But I'm curious, if they actually made an offer, would you actually look into something like that, or is your schedule just too ridiculous?
That's come up before. And, when I went to Shark Tank, I hung out with Mark Cuban a little bit. And it was funny because, that day, during that taping, actually, I don't think I'm supposed to talk about this shit, but maybe I will.
No one's still watching.
No, I think I'm under NDA for, what got funded that day. But, they had a fucking guy doing, an exercise video, right? And people were offering him, 25 grand for 50% of the company. And it was just, it was so far removed from the kind of shit we do. Because, the channel for a lot of this stuff to get distributed was QVC. And I was just like, God, I don't really have anything to offer these guys, and the investing felt opportunistic and a little bit like a game, like you're forced to invest just instantaneously, after just hearing a little bit about this company and not really getting a chance to meet these guys. And the idea was to kind of quick flip and blow this consumer product out by using, your presence on the show and stuff like that. And that's just not what I do for a living, right? I got offered a show recently that was coach some teams that were going to conceive, build, and launch products in 72 hours, And I was just like, this is a fucking Family Feud now. It's not really what we do for a living. And so I think, I've had a crisis, I think growing up I thought being on TV would be amazing. And now I just think I would just be a clown there to amuse you and not really actually make anything better, right? So the shows that would probably improve the earth are not the shows that I'm ever going to get offered, likely, nor would anyone fucking watch. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. I think there's a line, sorry. But we would love for you to join the line.
So you talked earlier about kind of your reckless success with the stock market, and your success has obviously changed over the year, and it's become more matured. At what point were you able to start relying on your experience, to make a good decision rather than just chalking it up to kind of luck? When did you know that your experience was mature?
Oh, it's definitely not. I mean, at no point is your experience mature. Ask anybody. They despise themselves from, their year ago self, right? They're just like, dude, what was I thinking? I mean, I get off a phone call sometimes and they're like, oh, that was a poor move. I'm going to walk away from here and I'm going to be like, I can't believe I said some of that shit out loud. And I'm sure I offended somebody and I better go preemptively apologize or something like that. You never do. And if you start thinking that now you've got it figured out and now you're mature, you're both wrong and an asshole. And so you don't. And I still do things recklessly now, I think. And maybe the stakes have changed a little bit. And I'm married and I have a child. And one of my heroes is Elon Musk, who has taken twice. He has bet every dollar he had. And kept no safety net whatsoever, right? And it's worked out really well for him in the end, but that's incredibly fucking reckless, right? And yet you could also paint him as a mature, wise, amazing leader who's put people on the moon and built an awesome car, as well as a bunch of other shit too. But no, it's never right. It's never mature. It's just it's your best try that day. And hopefully you can build in a mechanism for reflection, a mechanism you can hopefully surround yourself unlike all the buddies that I had keep telling me that I was like a genius, my wife will hear me on a call at home because I work from home, and then I'll get off and she'll be like, Jesus, you fucked that up. I'll be like, what? And she'll be like, why would you have said that to that guy? Like, I'm like, oh, come on.
Spouses
now I'm
are great
worse.
for that.
Like, yeah. No, but she's particularly good at this shit too. And
Mine is too.
Just don't surround yourself with yes men and people who are just going to constantly There's a friend of mine who's an author named A.J. Jacobs. He's amazing. He wrote like The Year of Living Biblically, where he lived literally to the letter of the Bible for an entire calendar year. His beard was like out to here, and he only wore natural fibers and shit like that, no shrimp, and But he did an experiment where he said yes to everything his wife asked him to do for 30 days. And she thought it was cool for like 6 or 7 days, and then she was worried like their marriage was going to fall apart because there was no like push and pull yet, right? And so I think the most important thing is to like keep going for it, but surround yourself with people who can call bullshit on you a little bit. I think the most dangerous aspects of my life, I had either not surrounded myself with people like that or chose to not listen to them at all. And I think that's when you can get really fucked up. Like I have this principle called bold humility, which is like, be bold, like don't apologize for being awesome. Like all these business advice books that say humility, 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 like 100% humility is not a natural instinctive human trait. Like each of us in this room is totally awesome at something, right? And it may be something that the world generally values, or it may just be something generally worthless, but we all have some awesomeness in us. And I don't think you should have to apologize for being awesome at something. Like when I hire a coder for one of my companies, I don't want them to have to pretend like, oh, I kind of suck, and I want them to admit like, no, I'm the fucking best at something. But where we get into trouble is when we forget the other half, the humility half. Like anyone here who's ever been a boss, think of the very first time you were a boss and a question came up you didn't know the answer to, but you're like, well, I'm the boss, and so I can't let everyone else here know I don't know the answer to this question, so I have to pretend, right? And you say something stupid, you make something up, you cover for the fact you have no idea, and like the people around you can sense that and they move away from you. The first time like that you're a boss and you don't know the answer and you say, hey everyone, what should we do? Who has opinions on this? Suddenly you're empowered, you've collected all that wisdom around you, and everyone around you feels that much more awesome, like they've contributed to you that much more. And you build this strong team, even from people who might not even report to you, or like that's like the dynamic of actual power, is asking people to contribute and listening to their response. I mean, I've been lucky enough to spend time with the president, and that's how the president operates. Like, he talks to the honchos, and then he actually asks the people behind them who are carrying their bag and keeping their calendar, what would you do? And like, in doing so, he's empowered everybody in that room. He's bought a real excitement and a loyalty and an eagerness to contribute from everybody there. And it's also just informed a much broader set of perspectives for him and helps him to make a better decision. And so I think like it's not at some tipping point suddenly you're a genius and you've got it all figured out. It's a process by like, do your best, take chances, surround yourself with a feedback loop, and don't hesitate to admit when you need help with that.
Okay.
Thanks. I think you answered the question I was really trying to ask.
All right, cool.
Hi, Chris. My name is Ethan. Thanks for having this talk. You talked about the carriers and kind of respecting their craftiness, but I was actually just talking with some people in my office today, and the fact that data plan, like the price for bandwidth going up and $90 data plans, to me it's just collusion. And I was wondering like what you thought about that industry, and the one company I kind of see trying to disrupt it is Freedom Pop lately, but I was wondering if you're working with or looking for any companies or doing anything in that space of really trying to fix the data plan issue in wireless.
Yeah, I'm not working in data in wireless anymore. It's funny enough, I would say it's too regulated, and like it just requires too much overhead for a VC to get into a space like that. Like I'd need to have lawyers and lobbyists and public interest groups, and I just don't have a staff. It's me and one other person. And so there's a reality, we're running out of spectrum. Like we're just running out. Like every time you use your phone to watch YouTube, it sucks up a certain amount of wireless spectrum, and with more phones running more YouTube, et cetera, there's just not enough left. And unlike fiber, which uses light, which multiplexes at a rate that keeps constant with Moore's law, so it's geometric, extracting performance out of wireless spectrum is linear. Like Shannon's law is a step function and it's linear. And so we're using geometrically more, but we're only increasing the efficiency like this. And so it literally is an invisible finite resource unless we manage it differently. And right now it's warehoused by carriers who don't use it very much. It's equipment's run on it that doesn't work very well. Like my team at Google spearheaded a bunch of the 700 megahertz and TV white spaces initiatives to free up some of that stuff in between the TV channels. And after I left, they were really successful at making that work and bringing more spectrum online for experimentation. But I think the pricing is decoupled from that reality right now. Like what you pay for SMS is just utter bullshit, in terms of what it actually costs them to deliver that. But let's be clear, we're just running out of it. And so unless we figure something out quickly with cell splitting or a different way of open spectrum management, like I think we're going to have a problem where there's going to be a digital divide where rich people get access to spectrum and poor people don't.
Thanks. Real quick, was Design LLC one of your shell companies?
Yeah, Design LLC was definitely one of my shells, yeah. Larry Page taught me how to start shell companies that were Google-proof. And so if you think about Design LLC, like the word design occurs before the word LLC, or the abbreviation LLC, so many times on Google that if you were looking for my thing called Design LLC, it would get lost among all the thousands and thousands of companies that are called something Design LLC. And so that's why I used it as a shell.
Hi, my name's Jeanette. I was curious, obviously you are constantly speaking to young entrepreneurs and young companies, and then companies that are getting their initial boards, and you spoke about Marissa Mayer earlier. Just in general, there's been a lot of discussion about whether or not having women executives at especially technology companies and things like that, and again, obviously with the current trend, there's been a lot of that discussion. Do you think there's actually a legitimate value about a different kind of way of looking at things that truly it takes a person of a different gender to see, or do you think that it's maybe kind of dangerous because there's forced gender discrimination, sort of almost?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to wrap my head around the arguments that women bring a certain something different than men do to a company, because I just think that's boxing people in, right? And raising a daughter, like it's funny how when your daughter's born, everyone gives you pink shit, and you're like, turns out she's capable of wearing blue shit too. I checked, it works. But I mean, think of like all the men executives and the different styles of management they have, right? I mean, think of all the male entrepreneurs all the male investors Just think of the guys in your neighborhood. Like, they all have very, very different styles and traits and characteristics, and to box them in and say that like one of those is manly is a little broken. So that said, I think Marissa has individual character traits and business traits that are like just specific to her. And I don't know if they correlate to her being a woman or just her being awesome. But, if you look at a company like Google and you look at Shona Brown and Sheryl Sandberg, who's now at Facebook, and Susan Wojcicki and Megan Smith, and I'm going to leave somebody out and be in real trouble, I'm sure. But there's just like this powerful cadre of women who have very different ways of doing business. Some of those women I mentioned are straight, some are gay, some dress in haute couture and don't apologize for it, some dress in like jeans with sleeves rolled up, like some I would come cry to, some would probably punch me in the nose and tell me to buck up if I were crying. Like, I mean, to group them all together, I don't know. So I think there's amazing female, like Padmasree Warrior, who is like the CTO at Cisco, makes no apology for the fact that she's an amazing artist, dancer, cook. She knits, and she's also just a badass fucking executive of a Fortune 500 company. But I don't know if she has any natural advantage or disadvantage in terms of her skill set. I do think women are dealt a really shitty hand in terms of getting into these companies and surviving those companies, and I think that's the result of the stereotyping that happens. And I think that's the result of preconceived notions. And so I don't like to reinforce them with saying hey, a woman in this room would somehow make it work differently, because that's presaging some outcome that puts you in a fucking box. And I think that's the opposite direction of where we should be going.
Right.
So I got asked. Yeah, I have I got asked, do I invest in companies that have women CEOs or whatever? Yeah. So one of my best investments in my portfolio is a company called Style Seat, and it's run by Melody McCloskey, who is an amazing entrepreneur who is very easy to underestimate, because she's young and beautiful, and you're just like, well, if you can't be an entrepreneur, your hair looks too nice. But it was funny. I invested in that company because I knew Melody, and I knew she was capable of like shipping good product, and I put in a little bit of money, and I was just like, I don't know anything about this market. So she built a booking engine and calendaring and payment engine for salons, stylists, health, estheticians and stuff like that. And I came home and told my wife about it. I was like, look, I backed Melody because I think she's just great, but I don't know anything about this business really. And my wife was like, do you know how much women pay to get their hair cut? Mm-hmm. I was like, do I look like I know? I go to Supercuts. No, I don't know. And she's like, yeah, it's a couple $100, for people in the big cities. Yeah. And she's like, no offense, by the way. She's like, do you also know there aren't that many people our age who are actually blonde? And I was like, no, really? And she started naming all these people we know. She's like, she's not blonde, she's not blonde, she's not blonde. That's like a $300 a quarter treatment. I was like, oh, no shit, really? And so suddenly I started to realize this was like a huge market. And what was funny was Melody had been going up and down Sand Hill Road talking to a bunch of stiff white guys about this business, and no one was taking her seriously because she's young, because she's a woman, because she hadn't started anything before, and because she's dealing with a problem they didn't know how to solve. The other aspect to it is like a big chunk of her business is the African American hair market. Mm-hmm. So braids and weaves are expensive, and it's a big part of the disposable income of a lot of those communities. And who on Sand Hill Road would possibly fucking know that, right? And so Melody's out there crushing it with this business that has close to $100 million in annual bookings going through it right now, and people will continue to underestimate her because they don't know her.
Do you think that's because they don't understand the market, or because she's a woman, though?
No,
I didn't have any trouble raising money. I know I'm not young and beautiful, but I am a woman.
I think it's both. You had much more reputation, so you'd already proven yourself. You were already a reporter.
Not as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, you were a well-known brand, and you went to raise money from people who you were a known entity with, right? So Melody just wasn't, right? She was a producer at Current, and a digital product manager, et cetera. So I think, I mean, look, for every story about how there are women who make it, I think there are more about women who don't get a shot, or who don't give themselves a shot. Right. And so I didn't invest in Melody because she's a woman, but I think she's going to make me more money than all but, I think she might be the third or fourth most valuable company I've ever invested in.
Wow. All right, as much as that was a great answer, please don't ask questions from the audience. It's really disrespectful to people standing in line. We barely have time to get through them.
Hi, Chris. I'm Joe Winke. So there's a lot of unemployed people out there, and the numbers are higher than the stats, and technology has disrupted a lot of that. But you talked about the Google car, and there's 2 million truck drivers, and then all the cab drivers and the FedEx guys and the UPS guys, and there's 3D printers coming online, and it's just a lot of stuff that is coming real fast, and the entrepreneurs here are good, but they just don't seem to be keeping pace with this. I don't think there's going to be enough jobs. And you work with a lot of entrepreneurs. Have you thought about this and how society might start preparing for a lot of unemployed people?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that the president asked me and guys like Shervin Pishavar, et cetera, to gather technology leaders to meet with him and do open Q&A behind closed doors. And one of the things he kind of heard a lot was the same thing he heard from Steve Jobs. It's just a lot of these jobs aren't ever coming back. But the parallel to that is a lot of these jobs we don't necessarily want to come back. And the harsh reality is we have to get our heads, we have to be ahead of that curve rather than behind it, right? So it's very easy, when you, to kind of tie into the libertarian part, it's really easy to see everything we do in Silicon Valley as an exercise in efficiency. I'm sure that most of the people in this room have an Amazon Prime membership, you know, and like it's so easy to just one click and buy your shit, right? And like skip your local merchant and buy that stuff. And like I use it so much I have like a cardboard problem, you know, and the result is like, you know, local merchants are going out of business. Like you can't buy shit locally. The stores aren't there.
They're going to do same-day delivery soon, and that'll decimate retail.
It wipes out a lot of people, right? And so it's very easy as an entrepreneur to see that as a benefit because I just saved you a bunch of money. Like I gave you a greater selection and saved you a bunch of money and like made it possible to access. I mean, my wife needed like fake blood for her shark bite victim costume last night, you know? And like I Amazon Prime the shit out of that. I didn't walk into a costume store like, and I've got like, it was an add-on product, so they made me buy like 20 of them to get it shipped, but I've got like 20 vials of zombie blood if anyone needs it. Like, but that was money that came out of the mouth of the local merchant, but it was super easy for me to be in another town and order it. It just showed up at my house, right? So consumer benefit, but with an externality that wipes out somebody's job. And we get the luxury of not having to ever take that into account when we build stuff, right? So
It's a revolution, right?
Let him answer the question.
well, no, I mean, we're on the same page here. What I'm pointing out is, again, what I think is the short-sightedness of the libertarian let the market decide all this shit kind of point of view, because the harsh reality is that when I rode my bike across the country in 2009 and I went right across the middle of the country, like paralleling old, like Interstate 40 basically, and old Route 66, a lot of those towns have gone away. Like they're not smaller or like depressed, they're gone. Like there was a town in Oklahoma where the facade of one of the buildings had collapsed into the street and they just put up 2 cones as to say like, don't drive over the bricks. Like it didn't even get shuffled into the gutter. Like you go to these towns and like the hardware store is closed. The place where you get your hair cut is closed. Like the dress retailer downtown closed. Like all these places are closed, replaced by the big box store, like a Walmart and a Family Dollar and a Dollar General. And you ask the kids, like, where do you hang out? And they're like, Walmart. And I'm like, no, like, where do you hang out to like get close to your friends and shit like that? And they're like, Walmart. And you walk through the Walmart and you see that the people there who are working for hourly wage used to be the small business owners who've been decimated by that. And you start to ask yourself, okay, this has been an amazing exercise in efficiency and like Walmart has everyday low prices, but like, what is it if we don't have security in our jobs? Like, what is it if there are no careers left anymore? You know, I grew up in a town that was the primary employer was General Motors, and they made radiators and air conditioners for GM cars. Like, almost everyone I knew's parents were in the union. Almost everyone I knew grew up in a house that they didn't have to worry about making payments on because they had a nice union job. And they didn't have a second home, but they had enough money to take their family on vacation, and you know, maybe they had a hunting cabin, you know, and a canoe or something like that. Like, and they could afford to send their kids to state school. Like, there was something awesome about growing up in that time where all my friends' parents were actually middle class, but had some job security as long as they showed up and did their job. Like, we don't fucking have that anymore in this country. Like, that scares the shit out of me. And so, you know, to not make it overtly political, like, I worry, like, we've been letting a market try and take care of this, and it's not working. Like, we have a very concrete education divide. We have a very concrete housing divide. We have a very concrete nutrition divide. We have a very concrete digital divide. Like, we've divided into these 2 countries where we have a bunch of people who have no stake in their future. They work on an hourly wage, no benefits. If anything befalls them, they're completely fucked. And then the rest of us who own everything. And when you're building technology companies and you're living in Silicon Valley and you've got a startup and you just point at a problem and you make it better, it's easy to never have to think about any of those externalities at all. And so I worry about that. I don't know what the answer is. Like, is Walmart a good thing or a bad thing? Like, it's a good thing if you're living paycheck to paycheck. And if you ask the people who've been displaced by Walmart, they'll be the first people to tell you Walmart's great because it has everything I need and it's everyday low prices, right? And yet, it's funny. It's this really weird, like, you know, seppuku.
So, I mean, I guess this is the same thing I was trying to get at with Uber. You think about those things. Does it change your investing habits? Does it change your...
I think Uber, for now, the people that Uber displaces are the fleet managers. Because I think Uber inspires a whole generation of individual business people who are like using Uber to finance a car, to run their own
But in
business.
general, this movement towards efficiency, I mean, let's face it, if Uber makes a better transportation model, that's great for people who can afford Uber. I mean, I think it fits into what you just said. I mean, in general, do you worry about displacement for people who can afford it?
I think if Uber succeeds, fewer cars get made. I don't think it displaces it. Like, I mean, it creates jobs for drivers and it destroys more jobs for car manufacturers. But I name a company of mine that doesn't do that. Name a company that predicated on efficiency. That's my whole fucking point. Is that like?
And my point is, you just went on this beautiful soliloquy about the impact of it. My point is, does that impact how you make investing decisions? Does it impact how you make consumer decisions, or do you just worry about it?
I mean, consumer decisions, absolutely. Investing decisions, I mean, I didn't invest in Elacart because I think it just makes people fat, right? And like, I respect the team that builds that. They're having a lot of success, but I think like making it so easy to order extra shit at Applebee's that all you have to do is pick up the fucking device on your table and push more buttons and you get more fucking onion rings, like, it's probably not something that's improving the health of the planet. And it's my bad. I would have made a lot of money and maybe I let down all my investors by not doing that. But I do see a company like Uber making it safer for people to travel, improving the productivity of their time. Like,
so it's a balancing act for most of these companies.
Yeah, of course, it's a balancing act. Like, I don't invest in guns, tobacco, porn, but with some of these companies, like Style Seat, absolutely empowers a generation of mostly women stylists to manage their own destiny and not be beholden to a salon anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, no doubt about it. I feel good about that investment. But, because it's building efficiency into the spectrum, probably there's going to be fewer stylists total. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Hey, Chris. So you mentioned a handful of industries that you have like a lot of experience with and invested in, like wireless, with Google and the taxi commission at Uber that are overregulated. I wondered if you could shed some light on some industries that you have a lot of experience with that are invested in right now, probably or other than finance, that could use a lot more regulation from the government.
More regulation from the government. This is funny. We're doing a renovation on our house right now, and I've been waiting 4 months for the permitting. But I don't know. I do worry about finance. I worry. It's funny.
Other than finance.
Yeah, but I was going to say, I know you said other than, but I'm going to bring it back in. Here's the weird thing. Like, if you actually want to key in on one part of this, is that for me to start letting things like this or the externalities move into my investing decisions starts becoming eerily paternalistic, right? Mm-hmm. And at the heart of regulation often is like in the consumer protection type stuff, is saying there's a group of people who don't know better and I need to look out for them.
Right.
And
well,
I deeply believe that's true. I deeply believe that's true, but it's also a little bit fucked up to say mm-hmm. I need to step in and make decisions for these people who aren't capable of making decisions for themselves, right? Mm-hmm. That's weird, right? And so there is something kind of eerily unsettling about saying I know better than you, mm-hmm. Because I borrowed a bunch of money to go to school and I got a big education, and so let me make this decision for you, mm-hmm. right? And so I don't know. Most of it for me comes down to regulation around people who are making decisions with low information, right? I've now had the opportunity to witness, focus groups for the election. So there's this really funny thing that happens in focus groups, nonpartisan focus groups, where it's Obama people go and ask the questions, but they don't tell them they're Democrat or Republican, and they'll ask people ask people about big government. People are like, oh, boo, boo, big government, and they're like, what do you think about, taxes? Oh, boo, what do you think about Medicare? Medicare's cool, man. Yeah. Really? Medicare? Yeah, you like Medicare? Yeah, Medicare works out. Is Medicare a government program? No. Let me be clear. Medicare, not a government program. No. How do you know it's not a government program? And they'll pull out their pay stub and they'll say, we see here, this is my federal taxes, that goes to the government. These are my state taxes, that goes to the government. This is Medicare. I pay that into this business called Medicare. And this is Social Security, and I pay into that too. We have a shitload of Americans who believe that's the case, right? And so should those people be allowed to sign mortgage applications? You know, like, do those people process the full implications of compounding interest on an APR or anything like that? Like, do they know what points are and stuff? Like, I don't know. It's pretty fucking elitist to say they don't, and yet the empirical data from the last round of the economy are they fucking don't, right? And so, like, I think you excluded the one sector where I think when it comes down to consumer decisions, like, I worry about consumers trading the short term for the long term every time. Like, paternalistically, if anyone here did a startup that used lottery economics to incent good long-term behavior, I'm all over that shit. Jay Walker, the guy who started Priceline, realized there was a problem that that old people weren't taking their medicine when they were supposed to take their medicine, right? And they're like splitting pills and taking too long. So I'm told he built a medicine bottle that, if opened at the right time, would enter you to win a lottery. So guess what happens? Old people start taking their medicine at exactly the right time. Like you put a little bit of self-interest in there and you get the right outcome. Because it turns out humans are horrible at calculating the expected value of a lottery. Like, an entire city exists in the desert because of that, right? And so, like, it's really paternalistic, but I'm like, hey, let's just use lotteries to incent good long-term behavior. If you're not smart enough to gather all the information about what would be good, healthy eating decisions, then fuck it. I will incent you with prizes to eat better because I know in the long run I'm going to save money from the healthcare budget, right? And so it's like anything involving consumer decisions is the area where I'm most concerned, and also like I feel so fucking elitist that I think like somehow I have a better answer than anybody else, you know? Is that enough of an internal quandary for you? Right.
Exposed to a lot of these. All right, we got to move on. Sorry, it's like this is a marathon Panda Monthly at this point, and I want to get these last 3 questions.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for coming down here. Really appreciate it. It's been awesome seeing you and talking and hearing from you. I guess the question I wanted to ask is, with all the focus on the VC world and the entrepreneurs, and as you said, you know, there's a lot of focus, and people think they're really super cool and awesome, and you know, many of them are. I guess if there are folks out there who actually don't have enough money to be VCs or angels or whatever, and can actually be part of the startup ecosystem for whatever reason, right? Let's say legal or whatever. What are some of the things you would kind of suggest that they could do to actually be part of it? Like, do you think there's still room for the kind of stuff you were saying, actually just like cold calling people and saying, hey, I want to help, what can I do?
I think there's more room for that than there was before, right? Because like a friend of mine just called up to ask about being an angel investor, and I was just like, turns out it's a better time than ever because stuff like AngelList exists. It's like there's dozens and dozens of incubators and accelerators. There's people everywhere looking for help of any kind. Like, one of my mottos is create value before you ask for value back. Right. And I think there's never been an easier time for you to just walk in and be helpful. If you have enough money to kind of put food on the plate and not have to worry about making a paycheck immediately, or you can do it in addition to your job, like I think it's never been easier to do that. And so I heartily encourage that. I think just showing up and being helpful, it's never going to get you in any trouble. And frankly, you might end up with a big piece of the company and not have to have paid for it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Hey Chris, Ryan Archdeacon Orware. What excites you about the future, and where would you like to place your money? What markets that you haven't already gotten into yet?
I put my money where my thoughts and vision are all the time, so I don't think there's any market I haven't gotten into yet. Where I invest is places I can be helpful, so I don't do biotech, for instance, like because I wouldn't know how to be helpful to somebody. Like, but so I try and invest in problems that I know I can have some modicum of impact on solving. And you know, what excites me about the future is probably, like, I would encourage anyone to read Buckminster Fuller stuff, because I think he was the one serious author who believed that technology would solve our Malthusian problems rather than like accelerate them, you know, and accelerate us into a nanotech disaster. You know, I think like I think he better represents my optimism than I could on stage. So.
Okay, great. Last question.
Hi, Chris. My name is Josh.
Hey.
My question is, what if you could boil it down to simple terms, what drives you? What wakes you up in the morning? And is it to create? Is it to win? And how have you seen this change with your level of success?
Yeah, so I didn't grow up with any money, and in the beginning I was definitely driven by money. I used to gather up all the walnuts in my yard. If anyone's ever had a walnut tree, the walnuts come up, they're covered in a really pungent skin. Like they reek, right? But I used to poke holes in them, tie string on them, and then I took my little brother, I put a sandwich board on him, and I would go door to door with our wagon selling air fresheners. And until somebody in the neighborhood called my mom, and she'd be like, oh my God, where'd they go? And so I have just always wanted to make money. Then you make some, and it's really easy for you to sit up on a stage and say like, money's not everything, right? Because so many of you are underwater, paying back student loans, trying to make ends meet right now, and you're like, fuck you, like money would be really nice. But it's true, you make a little bit and you're just like, you know, I'm not gonna say mo money, mo problems, but life gets complicated, like, and shit arises, and so you have to find something deeper and more meaningful than that. Like, I always thought once I made X dollars, I'd be out, but I'm not. And I don't think it's about ego, and I don't think it's about rep, and I've been laying low and not even talking publicly for a long time now, until just the last month, really. I think it's about just like, I can't not help fix a problem if I see it. And if you talk to my mom and dad, they'll tell you that's been the most consistent trait since I was young. Like, the money thing was probably like more conscious, but subconsciously, like, I can't avoid helping fix a problem. And so every time I think I'm like, okay, enough of this startup shit, these people betray me, it's fucking horrible, it takes, you know, time out of my day, I'd rather spend that time with my daughter who's amazing. Like, instead I'm like, oh, that's a pretty fucking cool idea that could solve a real problem. Like, maybe I should, let me, you know, I tell my wife, let me just do this one call with these guys. And, you know, I'll come out of the room and be like, oh yeah, I'm in. It's just, you can't help it. And I think if you really get down to like what drives a lot of entrepreneurs, people who are starting their businesses, investors, they just are addicted to solving problems. Mm-hmm. They can't help it. They see something wrong, they want to debate it, complain about it, and fix it. And I think that's what drives me, and I think that's the thing that transcends money and stage in life, is that there are people who just want to fix shit. And I'm sure a lot of you feel that way too.
All right, great.
Thank you.
We are almost at the end.
Thank you.
All right. There will be more time for applause. There are 2 questions we ask at the end of every Pando Monthly.
I'm sweating. I get so excited
We're
about
going
these answers.
for quick answers here.
Okay.
Before we get to those 2, I have one for you. I can't believe no one asked in the Q&A. Yes or no, are you as disappointed with Obama as most of the people who voted for him?
You kidding me? So what's wrong? Like, our stock market's more valuable than it was when he came into office. We've created 5 million jobs. We ended a war in Iraq. I'm curious what the disappointment is. Like, frankly, I admire the guy for getting as much done as he has in the face of people whose sole purpose in life is to defeat him at the expense of our country. Like, I think the entire notion of patriotism has been shit upon by half of this country. When Governor Christie goes out and reaches across the aisle to try and get some shit done, like, watch the tweets that people sent him last night, calling him a traitor and, you know, and a fat Muslim sympathizer. Like, how fucked is that, right? So, guy goes out of his way to be helpful, but we've got a president who just made it so that everyone in this room will be guaranteed access to medical coverage despite a pre-existing condition. I have a pre-existing condition. Like, my wife has a pre-existing condition. Everybody in this fucking room, I'm sure, has one. If you end up not fitting their actuarial tables as being an ideal client. And so it takes a lot of fucking balls to push something like that through when you don't necessarily have all the political capital you'd want and a party in your face trying to oppose everything you do. So that's why I've ruthlessly fought for him to get back into office. That's why I've raised a lot of money. That's why I volunteered, taking people to Chicago. And I think we're going to win. And I hope everyone in this room, like, make sure that everyone they know in Ohio shows up to vote.
All right. Okay. What is the one thing you believe that no one else or very few people believe?
Oh, I forgot I was supposed to say this. I forgot I was supposed to study for this exam. I know you asked this at the end. I don't know. I probably said it already. It's really late.
You said a
I think.
lot.
Yeah, it's really late, and I know people want to go. So I think I'll just say ibid to whatever I said before.
That's so lame. Okay, this one you are not punting on. I love when we at the end of your montage, it'll be Sacca saying, oh, I don't know. This one I'm not letting you punt on. If you could pick one mediocre superpower to have in the world, what would it be?
Oh, I forgot about that question too. You should remind your guests that they have to answer these questions.
It's better when it's off the cuff.
Mediocre superpower?
Yeah, do you
what
want
did
some
Elon
examples?
say? What did Elon say?
Elon said to not get stuck in traffic.
That's punting,
Because
right?
he was,
I mean, that's
no,
just, that's lame.
well, no, it was to sort of magically be able to beam when he's late in traffic or something like that. I mean, it's a superpower
Yeah,
there's
I want to
constraints
function
around.
on full power with 2 to 3 hours of sleep. That's what I want. I say this as a father of a 1-year-old who gets going at like 5:30, ready to fucking go.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, that's my superpower.
All right.
Does that count?
That counts.
Okay.
It's a
Hey,
variation
thank you,
of what
everybody.
most
I really
people
appreciate
say.
it. Yeah.
Good talk, everyone.